Chapter 706. Lady Long Yu wanted to kill herself, but Long Fei Yi didn't give her the chance. Even though Lady Long Yu's blade was the closest to her, Long Fei Yi's was still faster. He slit her throat in front of everyone. Lady Long Yu couldn't believe it. She never expected to lose her last shred of dignity. Even more unexpected was the fact that Bai Yanqing really didn't come to save her. She slumped to the ground, her eyes wide open. She always thought she was the calmest person in the City of Daughters. Perhaps this was the first time she was truly calm. She regretted bringing such a disaster to the City of Daughters. After letting Lady Long Yu fall to the ground, Long Fei Yi turned to face the crowd and Long Yu. This is the fate of those who dared to barge into my Duke of Qin's estate. In an instant, the crowd fell silent. Who could believe what they'd just seen? Long Fei Yi had killed Lady Long Yu within 3 moves. Lady Long Yu had only used her sword once from start to finish. Almost everyone thought that today's battle would be a chaotic battle that would last for several days. But this was the result. Lady Long Yu, the city lord and the Iron Lady of the assassination world, had died to a junior's sword in less than the time it took to brew a cup of tea. How could anyone accept this? Even outsiders couldn't believe it, to say nothing of the City of Daughters residents. They refused to believe that Lady Long Yu had died just like that, much less that Long Fei Yi had such powerful internal energy. They were all asking themselves the same question. When did Long Fei Yi become so strong? That's right. When did Long Fei Yi become so strong? Everyone paid attention to his achievements in the political arena. Almost no one paid attention to his martial arts over the years. Many people had even forgotten his identity as Tianshan Qinzhou's closed-door disciple. But he was just this strong. Given Long Fei Yi's true strength, where should he rank on the list of experts? Would Carefree City's Qi Zonglin, TangClan's Tang Zijin, or even Celestial Mountain's Zhangqiuzi be his match? The entire place was silent for a very long time. No one dared to move. Long Fei Yi didn't care about the surroundings, whether it was movement or silence. He raised his sword and pointed at the gate of the City of Daughters, saying coldly, "People in the city, listen up. Those who surrender to this prince's sword, stay. Those who refuse to submit will die." At this moment, the stunned assassins on the city gate all came back to their senses and were in an uproar. The few sisters of the Long clan immediately started wailing. Lung Bingling took the lead, and Long Shuang and the other sisters immediately followed. They all flew down the city gate to avenge their mother. "Long Fei Yi, I'll kill you. Long Fei Yi, how dare you kill my mother? I'll kill you. Long Fei Yi, City of Daughters will not let you off." Long Fei Yi only used one move to subdue the leader, Long Bingling. With his sword on her neck, the others saw this and did not dare to move. No matter how agitated he was, he would still be rational in the face of reality. No matter how sorrowful they would always remain calm in the face of death. The winner was king, and the loser was a bandit. The winner lived, and the loser died. This was the fate of assassins. They had lost, so they all lowered their heads without any complaints. "Men, take them all away." Under Long Fei Yi's command, a few Shadow Guard experts came forward and took the Long sisters away. Who knew that at this moment, Lung Shuang suddenly shouted, "Long Fei Yi, I have something to say to you." What happened to her? What did she want to say? In an instant, everyone looked over. Long Fei Yi also looked over. Lung Shuang smiled. Only at this point, when she called his name, would he look at her directly. "Long Fei Yi, I only hope that I won't meet you again in my next life." After she finished speaking, she pressed the sword against her neck and collapsed to the ground, disappearing like a jade. The hatred of killing her mother was eternal. Loving him was also eternal. She only hoped that they would not meet again in the next life. Only then could she avoid the bitterness of not being able to obtain this love. "Fourth sister," Long Bingling shouted. She wanted to throw herself at her, but the Shadow Guard held her back. The other sisters were much more cold-blooded and emotionless. All of them kept their heads bowed, unmoved. They knew that their fates would be the same. It was only a matter of time. Just who had hired their mother to kidnap Grand Concubine Yi? They still didn't know. Long Fei Yi had taken them away for the sake of clarifying the matter. Since they couldn't give Long Fei Yi an answer, they could only die. Many of the people around them began to sigh. Only now did they realize Long Shuang's feelings for Long Feiyi. Unfortunately, Long Feiyi didn't spare her another glance. His head was still raised towards the city gates. Long Feiyi, ah Long Feiyi, do you know that there are many women in this world who love you very, very much? Han Yunqi stared at Long Feiyi's proud back from the carriage. She couldn't believe that such a cold man was actually her husband. Abruptly, Long Feiyi asked loudly, "What about you too?" At his words, two old women flew down the gates at the same time. They fell to one knee as soon as they touched the ground. "The Liu family of the City of Daughters is willing to serve your Highness Duke of Qin. The Jiang family of the City of Daughters is willing to serve your Highness Duke of Qin." "Good," Long Feiyi said loudly. Now the clan heads standing on top of the city gates exchanged glances. But soon enough, they all descended the gates and personally opened them to kneel before Long Fei in a single line of surrender. A wise man submits to circumstances. Moreover, the most ruthless and cool-headed of them all was an assassin. In terms of individual combat, they couldn't beat Long Feiyi. In terms of group combat, the City of Daughters was in danger of being massacred. Surrendering was the best choice they could make. Of course, there were also those who didn't want to surrender, but they didn't dare to fight Long Feiyi 1-0. They had already snuck out of the City of Daughters the moment Madame Longyu collapsed. The city gates were already open. Most people had chosen to surrender. Long Feiyi's eyes flashed with satisfaction. Then he turned and walked towards Han Yunqi. Han Yunqi watched him quietly. They weren't far apart, but she felt as if he was walking towards her from the other side of fate. Step by step, he seemed to be walking through two different worlds. Finally, he reached her. He took the reins and smiled. "Let's go. I'll take you to see this prince's reward." Han Yunqi smiled. Her heart was overflowing with indescribable emotions. Such a large and earth-shattering gift. How could she remain calm the next time he mentioned a reward? Under everyone's watchful eyes, Han Yunqi sat in the carriage. Long Feiyi personally held the reins and led her to the City of Daughters, the city he had bestowed upon her. Han Yunqi loved this feeling. She felt as if she wanted to travel the world with him until the end of time. Unfortunately, someone soon interrupted them. "We've avenged His Highness Duke of Qin. It's time for us to take revenge. Brothers, let's enter the city as well." Haha, Long Yu's death isn't enough to pay for her life. The City of Daughters Wang clan still owes us 3 lives. Every injustice has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. Brothers, our chance for revenge has come. Let's go. The group of martial artists brandished their weapons and strode towards the city gate. There were at least 10 assassin clans in the City of Daughters. Without the protection of the Long clan, these assassin clans might not be able to defeat the group of martial artists. In an instant, the clan heads who had surrendered all stood up and blocked the city gates. "What kind of hero are you to take advantage of someone's perilous state?" Someone cursed. "Haha, what kind of hero are you talking to assassins about? Shouldn't we be talking about a life for a life?" Someone asked with a chuckle. "You call yourselves righteous? Hypocrites." Someone cursed again. The Jianghu people roared with laughter. "Are you saying that we're righteous if we don't pay with our lives? If you have the ability to take money, then you have to have the ability to spend it. Righteous? Very well. This daddy will destroy the City of Daughters today and enforce justice on behalf of the heavens." Han Yunqi's good mood was completely ruined. The more she looked at these so-called righteous people, the more disgusted she felt. If Madame Longyu hadn't died, would they have dared to be so arrogant? Han Yunqi was about to speak when Long Feiyi suddenly threw the sword in his hand. It pierced the ground between the Jianghu people and the clan heads. In an instant, all the chatter stopped abruptly. The clan heads of the City of Daughters all looked at Long Feiyi. They seemed to want to say something, but they didn't. The group of Jianghu people also turned their heads. "If your Highness Duke of Qin is willing to continue speaking on our behalf, then it will be a great fortune for the Jianghu. The City of Daughters has committed all kinds of evil and killed countless people over the years. It's all thanks to your Highness Duke of Qin that we were able to destroy the Long clan today. Your Highness Duke of Qin, you must continue to uphold justice for us." After witnessing Long Fei Ye's strength, they became even more respectful and fawning. Long Fei Ye's cold eyes swept over the group of people. He was about to speak when Han Yunshi stood up and asked coldly, "His Highness Duke of Qin just said that Lung Yu is dead and the City of Daughters belongs to His Highness Duke of Qin. You don't understand?" At these words, the Jianghu people looked at each other in dismay. Someone tactless asked, "Qin Wang Fei, what do you mean by this?" His Highness Duke of Qin said that the City of Daughters belongs to this Wang Fei. From today onwards, the City of Daughters belongs to Qin Wang Fei. Anyone who wants to touch a person, a blade of grass, or a tree in the city will have to ask this Wang Fei's permission first. This, Qin Wang Fei, Your Highness Duke of Qin, you, then our grudge. The Jianghu people were shocked, and so were the surrendered soldiers of the City of Daughters. They had thought that Long Fei Yi and Han Yunshi would use this opportunity to curry favor with the so-called righteous factions of the Jianghu and hand over the City of Daughters clans for them to deal with. They hadn't expected that Han Yunshi would be so domineering as to protect them. At this time, an old man from the Jianghu stepped forward and said angrily, "Your Highness Duke of Qin, why? You have to give us an explanation." Qin Wangfei has already made it very clear. From today onwards, anyone who makes the City of Daughters their enemy is this prince's enemy. Long Fei Yi said coldly, "Everyone, do you want to enter the city or leave? It's up to you. Duke of Qin, we can give the City of Daughters to you, but we owe you several answers. Today, we must settle them, otherwise." Before the old man could finish speaking, Long Fei Yi suddenly reached out and grabbed the sword stuck in the ground. Holding it in his hand, he said, "Otherwise, what?" The old man immediately sucked in a breath of cold air and was secretly shocked. What a powerful internal energy! Otherwise, what? What could the old man do to Long Fei Yi? He could only angrily flick his sleeves and leave. If he stayed any longer, was he going to let Long Fei Yi chase him out? Seeing this, everyone was also indignant, but no one dared to say anything. They could only follow the old man and leave. The people of Carefree City didn't say anything from beginning to end. They were much smarter than the Jianghu people. The Jianghu was, in essence, a place where martial arts spoke. In front of Long Fei Yi, they had nothing to say. "Your Highness Duke of Qin, Carefree City didn't do anything. Will you still refund your commission?" Third Elder Qi asked jokingly. Chapter 707. Third Brother Qi's joke was to send a message to Long Fei Yi that Liberty City knew how to adapt to the situation. Go back and ask your city lord on my behalf whether this deal is worth it or not." Long Fei Yi said, "All right, I will definitely pass on your message." Third Brother Qi bowed politely and left with the others. Although many people in the group were dissatisfied, they could only obey Third Brother Qi's orders. Once they left, Qi Yaotian was the first to speak. "Third Uncle, are we going to let Long Fei Yi off so easily? His martial arts are so impressive. If he obtains the City of Daughters power, won't he be able to suppress Liberty City in the future?" The reason why Liberty City was hired by Long Fei Yi was to take the opportunity to destroy the City of Daughters. But now, it was only the Long clan that was destroyed. The City of Daughters' power was still there. Now, not only was the City of Daughters not destroyed, but it had also fallen into the hands of a big shot like Long Fei Yi. It was equivalent to Liberty City no longer facing the City of Daughters, but Long Fei Yi instead. Whether this deal was worth it or not, Liberty City had really suffered a huge loss. "Can you fight with him?" Third Brother Qi asked. Qi Yaotian's lips twitched. He had nothing to say. "If you can't beat him, you have to admit defeat," Third Brother Qi said as he stroked his beard with a solemn expression. Seeing this, the others did not dare to make a sound. Although Third Brother Qi seemed to admit defeat, he had been filled with a sense of crisis since a long time ago. He still felt like he was in a dream. He felt that the battle between Long Fei Yi and Madame Long Yu was just a dream, an unbelievable dream. Although Madame Long Yu was ranked behind the City Lord of Liberty City, their strength was actually not much different. However, the strength that Long Fei Yi displayed today was clearly much higher than Madame Long Yu's. Third Brother Qi could not help but wonder what would have happened if the City Lord of Liberty City had been the one fighting with Long Fei Yi instead of Madame Long Yu. Long Fei Yi was capable of swallowing the City of Daughters as well as Liberty City. They had to be wary of him. Although Chi Yao Tian had nothing to say, he secretly thought that he must discuss this matter with his father when he returned and find out the Achilles heel of Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqi. Thinking back to when Han Yunqi killed his giant poisonous bat and extorted a large sum of money from him, he still remembered this debt to this day. The people of Liberty City left, too. Long Fei Yi and his companions were the only ones left at the gate of the city. Han Yunqi was still sitting in the carriage. Long Fei Yi held the sword in one hand and the horse in the other. He was like Han Yunqi's most loyal guard, pulling her step by step into the city gate. The patriarchs who were originally blocking the gate hurriedly stepped aside. They stared at the slowly moving carriage. Their gazes were filled with reverence for Long Fei Yi and admiration for Han Yunqi. Compared to those who claimed to be righteous, this couple was truly righteous. Their bearing was unparalleled. Compared to the Long family, they were more willing to pledge their loyalty to King Qin and Qin Wangfei. After entering the city, Long Fei Yi personally drove the carriage and brought Han Yunqi to the Long family's mansion. This was the center of the City of Daughters. The Long family had either died or fled. No one surrendered. The gate was filled with people from various factions in the City of Daughters. Some were patriarchs, and some were lone assassins. Since they did not leave, it meant that they were willing to pledge their loyalty. Long Fei Yi held Han Yunqi's hand and got off the carriage. He did not pay any attention to the people who were waiting for them. He asked Han Yunqi seriously, "What do you think of this mansion?" "It's someone else's old mansion. I don't like it." Han Yunqi was actually a clean freak. Whether it was people or things, she did not like second-hand goods. "All right." Long Fei Yi immediately ordered the shadow guard beside him, "Men, tear it down and rebuild it." Before the shadow guard could reply, the people around them scrambled to express their willingness to help. "Forget it. Isn't it a waste of talent to let all of you build a house?" Han Yunqi said with a smile. Everyone immediately expressed that it was their honor to be able to serve Han Yunqi. Han Yunqi's lips curled into a cold smile. Her eyes were cold as she sized up everyone present. Gradually, everyone shut their mouths and did not dare to say anything. Everyone present was either the head of a family or a rather famous assassin. They were all people who had experienced great storms and waves, but they could not figure out Han Yunqi's thoughts. Long Fei Yi did not say anything. He looked at Han Yunqi's cold and stern expression and was very satisfied. This woman was becoming more and more like a leader. Finally, Han Yunqi opened her mouth cold and said, "What? Even the Iron Ladies are proficient in the art of flattery?" This princess thought that in the assassin business, they would only use their strength to speak. Hearing this, everyone revealed awkward expressions. Han Yunqi was mocking them for not having strength and only knowing how to flatter. They were indeed flattering her because they were afraid. They didn't know how this woman would rule the City of Daughters when His Highness Duke of Qin gave the entire City of Daughters to this woman. They also didn't know which family this woman would choose to support and which assassin to support. Therefore, they could only try to curry favor with her first. There's no need for such empty words with this Wang Fei. This Wang Fei will like whoever shows me their strength. In the silence, Han Yunqi walked up the steps step by step. She stood in front of the tall gates of the Long estate and said coldly, "From today onwards, the City of Daughters will stop all assassins. This Wang Fei will reorganize the City of Daughters in the form of mercenaries. This Wang Fei will raise you and teach you the art of poison. You will only serve this Wang Fei. Those who are not interested can leave now. Those who are interested can stay." When they heard the words mercenaries, everyone present became excited and hot-blooded. When they heard the words art of poison, they became even more excited. They exchanged looks with each other, pleasantly surprised. Unexpectedly, no one left. In reality, they wanted to be loyal to His Highness Duke of Qin. They more or less looked down on this woman who only knew how to use poison and not martial arts. They didn't expect this woman to bring up the word mercenaries. The City of Daughters and Carefree City were both assassins. For a long time, there was little porridge but more monks. Employers became more and more picky, and their commissions became lower and lower. Whether it was the Long family or the Qi family, they had both established mercenary teams and cultivated professional mercenary legions in search of a new way out. For assassins, there was only one path: Kill for money. For mercenaries, there were many paths. They could accept all kinds of difficult missions and challenges, such as participating in a coup, acting as the vanguard, collecting intelligence, rescuing hostages, defending the city, and so on. Unfortunately, other than killing people, no one would trust them in other aspects. Because the two cities' mercenary teams didn't receive any orders, they could only disperse. Who would have thought that Han Yunshi would also think of the path of mercenaries? She was the mistress of the Duke of Qin's estate, the mistress of the commander-in-chief's estate in the south. If she reorganized the City of Daughters into a mercenary group, would they still have to worry about not having any missions? This was simply too good. For a moment, everyone bowed, expressing their willingness to serve Qin Wangfei. This time, it wasn't flattery, but sincere. You can all go back. In the afternoon, the details of the recruitment will be announced. You can sign up individually or come as a group from your family. This Wangfei will wait for you. Han Yunqi said seriously. Everyone was overjoyed and retreated to prepare. The City of Daughters had clearly been occupied, but other than the remnants of the Long clan who had fled, no one in the city felt grief or hatred. It was as if the entire city had been reborn and was filled with new vitality. After everyone dispersed, the Shadow Guard were left dumbfounded. They had always known that esteemed Wang Fei was different from the rest and that her poison skills were extraordinary, but they never thought that esteemed Wang Fei, a woman who didn't know martial arts, would be able to come up with terms like mercenaries and soldiers. It was simply too surprising. If it was said that His Highness Duke of Qin had taken over the City of Daughters with martial arts, then esteemed Wang Fei had used her wisdom to conquer the hearts of all the assassins in the city. Su Donglin stood to the side. He was the leader of the Poison Shadow Guard that Han Yunshi had personally raised. Currently, the Poison Shadow Guard only had a trifling dozen people, but he had a premonition that in the near future, esteemed Wang Fei would have a force strong enough to contend with His Highness Duke of Qin's Shadow Guard. Esteemed Wang Fei, which soldiers are you planning to form? Su Donglin couldn't help but be curious. Unexpectedly, Han Yunshi took out a notebook from her medical pouch, tore out a page, and tossed it to Su Donglin. It's written clearly here. Sort it out and announce it. Su Donglin found it even more inconceivable. Esteemed Wang Fei had come prepared? In reality, Han Yunshi hadn't come prepared. She had always been preparing to form a mercenary regiment. In the modern era, she had been sent to the jungles of Africa and the rainforests of South America to participate in battlefield medical work. She had to treat mercenaries who had accidentally been poisoned during field operations. Thus, she had some understanding of such matters. Cloud Realm Continent just happened to lack such an organization. Long Fei had taken over the City of Daughters, so she could make good use of all the assassins there. She wanted to form a few mercenary squads with a clear division of labor, such as gathering intelligence, rescuing hostages, fighting in the vanguard, and so on. These people all had strong foundations in martial arts. As long as they improved their professional knowledge, they would be able to carry out missions in less than 3 months. As soon as Su Donglin received the notebook, Long Fei snatched it away. He glanced at it before returning it to Su Donglin. With a wave of his hand, he dismissed the Shadow Guard. He did not express any opinion and remained calm and collected. However, his hands had long since betrayed him. Once again, he couldn't help but rub Han Yunqi's hair. Every time he did this, his eyes were filled with indulgence. Every time he did this, it meant that he was very satisfied with this woman. He wrapped an arm around Han Yunqi's shoulders and walked towards the Long estate, smiling. Looks like we'll have to stay a few more days. I've long planned out the mercenary squads. I'll tell Su Donglin the details later and have him make the arrangements. We'll leave tomorrow without delay. Ascending Celestial Mountain is more important. Han Yunqi was very serious. Long Fei stopped and looked at her. Han Yunqi, you and your lordship are a perfect match. Han Yunqi gave a start, but quickly broke into a smile. Your Highness Duke of Qin, are you praising Qinxia, or are you praising yourself? Long Fei carefully smoothed out her hair. Han Yunqi, your lordship isn't joking. He probably wouldn't be able to find another woman in this lifetime who could replace Han Yunqi. A perfect match meant that she was pleasing to the eye and pleasing to the heart. After he finished smoothing out her hair, Han Yunqi's clear eyes seemed even brighter. She said, "Since we're a perfect match, then we should be a perfect match. Long Feiyi, you have to love me well." Long Feiyi didn't say anything. He wrapped his arms around her waist, pulled her close, and sealed her lips with a kiss. The matter in the City of Daughters had a beautiful and unexpected outcome. Long Feiyi and Han Yunqi stayed in the City of Daughters. The next day, with Long Feiyi's help, Han Yunqi quickly arranged everything in the City of Daughters. The carriage slowly drove out of the City of Daughters West Gate, and they officially set foot on the road to Celestial Mountain. They didn't know that in the forest outside the city, there were two pairs of eyes staring at them. Who were they? Chapter 708. After a while, Tangli regained his composure and smiled at Ningjing. "I wanted to kill that giant python and take its gallbladder to nourish Jingjing's body, but it seems like I can't do it now." Tangli was still smiling at her. So, he didn't take the incident of her kicking to heart? Ningjing looked at him without saying a word. It wasn't clear what she was thinking, but she bit her lip. Tangli was panting and sweating profusely, but he was smiling devilishly. The tip of his tongue touched the corner of his mouth as he looked at her with interest. To be exact, he was looking at her lips. He rarely saw this woman doing such a thing. Ningjing quickly noticed the strange look in his eyes. She followed his line of sight and looked down, not understanding what he was looking at. "Hey, look!" She was about to ask when Tangli suddenly came closer, lowered his head, and kissed her lips. Ningjing had been bullied by Tangli before, and it was under the influence of drugs. However, Ningjing was stunned by his kiss. She widened her eyes in disbelief and her mind went blank. She couldn't think, but she could clearly feel that this man's lips were burning hot. She wanted to push him away, but she didn't think of that and just stood there in a daze. Actually, Tangli was shocked too. Although he always took advantage of her verbally, he really didn't have the intention to take advantage of her. He secretly swore to himself that he would never touch this wife. But just now, was there something wrong with his brain? Impulsive my ass. All right, since he kissed her, let's just treat it as a show and let go. But damn it, he didn't want to let go at all. This woman's lips were so soft. He couldn't control himself and sucked hard. Ningjing seemed to be frightened and immediately wanted to retreat. Tangli was anxious. He quickly moved closer and kissed her even harder, as if he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to taste her again if he let go. Mmmm. Ningjing started to struggle. It would have been better if she did not struggle. Once she struggled, she completely brought out the evil in Tang Li's bones. Since he couldn't let go of this sweet taste, he might as well go all out. Since he had already touched it, he might as well touch it to the end. In any case, this woman was his legal wife. In any case, this woman was the one who set him up first. He had endured this for a long time. Tang Li grabbed Ningjing's hand with one hand and wrapped his other hand around Ningjing's neck, trapping her in his arms. Ningjing wanted to turn her head away, but he simply hugged her head and kissed her deeply. Rather than calling it a kiss, it was more like a demand. It was so intense that Ningjing had no room to resist. She could only accept it. As they kissed, Tang Li had long forgotten about his dignity and how to settle accounts with her. All that was left in his mind was that Ningjing was really too beautiful. He had once had her for one night, so it could be said that he was addicted to her. Why didn't he know that Ningjing would be like a blooming flower, full and sweet? How could he stop now? Ningjing looked mature, but she was actually very inexperienced. She could not withstand Tang Li's teasing at all. The two of them quickly fell into each other's hands. The two of them were not people who were willing to compromise, and they were not people who could be forced to do something. Yet, they compromised to each other just like that. There must be a reason, but neither of them had realized it yet. After the passion, Tang Li hugged Ningjing tightly and wrapped his robe tightly around her. Ningjing was exhausted, but she was still conscious. She was so conscious that she knew what had just happened. This time, Tang Li was also conscious. He remembered her scent clearly. The two of them lay in the grass tiredly. Ningjing closed her eyes, while Tang Li opened his eyes and looked at the clear sky. He was sweating profusely, and his breathing had not stabilized yet. After a long silence, Ningjing finally said. Is that enough? What? Tang Li did not understand. If it's enough, let me go. I've paid back what I owe you, Ningjing said coldly. She had begun to interrogate herself in her heart about her compromise just now. Only then did Tang Li wake up from his drunken dream. He suddenly turned over and pinned Ningjing under his body again. Jingjing, your husband's performance did not satisfy you. Tang Li, Ningjing roared. Shut up. Oh, I was wrong. Jingjing, don't get agitated. Tang Li smiled naughtily. I wanted to say, your husband's performance did not satisfy you? With his ambiguous tone, was there a difference between the words satisfied and satisfied? Get lost. Ningjing wanted to push him away, but unfortunately, she really did not have the strength. She wanted to fall asleep immediately. Jingjing, let your husband hug you for a while. You're very warm. After Tang Li finished speaking, he had already hugged Ningjing tightly. Ningjing could not do anything to him, so she buried her head in his shoulder and bit down hard. Tang Li was in pain. It was so painful that the corners of his mouth twitched, but he endured it and let her bite him. He whispered in her ear, Jingjing, don't worry. Your husband will definitely dote on you, love you, and won't let you suffer any grievances. Put away your flowery words. You've had fun, so you should let me go now, right? Ningjing asked coldly. Jingjing, you don't believe me? Tang Li asked aggrievedly. Tang Li, stop acting with me. Ningjing was very disdainful. In reality, before they left the Tang sect, Mrs. Tang had made things difficult for her several times, but it was always Tang Li who helped her out. Even if Ningjing did not remember it in her heart, she at least saw it. From the time she married into the Tang sect until now, she had not suffered any grievances. Jingjing, I know about what happened between us in the past. I don't care about whether it was right or wrong. I just treat it as fate. What will it take for you to believe me? Tang Li was anxious. A complicated look flashed past Ningjing's eyes. After hesitating for a moment, she said, You're the Tang sect's clan master. If you give me all the Tang sect's hidden weapons, I'll believe you. Tang Li was in a difficult position, but he was sneering in his heart. Ningjing finally showed her tail. Liar. Ningjing took advantage of Tang Li's distraction to push him away. She wrapped his robe tightly around himself, leaving him topless. I'm not a liar. Tang Li grew serious. Although I'm the Tang sect's clan master, the Tang sect's hidden weapons are still in my father's hands. The designs are in the hands of the Council of Elders. Actually, Jingjing, can't you tell? I'm just a figurehead in name. What do you mean by a marriage alliance with Cloud Realm Trade Consortium? What do you mean you won't treat me unfairly? Ningjing laughed at herself. Now it looks like I'm the clan master's madam in name only, huh? Hearing this, Tang Li gave a long sigh and fell silent. Ningjing kicked him in the foot. Say something. You keep saying you won't let me suffer grievances? I'm probably the most aggrieved woman in the history of the Tang clan. Tang Li didn't speak, but Ningjing gave a soft snort and turned to leave. Jinger. Tang Li grew serious. If you're still willing to believe me, then come back with me right now. We'll go back to the Tang clan and fight for what belongs to us. Ningjing didn't answer, but kept walking without looking back. Tang Li chased after her with large strides. Jinger, you're my wife. Ningjing had planned to wait a few more days before giving in, but hearing these words made her turn around and meet Tang Li's sincere eyes. Jinger, you're my wife. If you don't believe me, who do you believe? If I don't believe you, who should I believe? My father didn't just abdicate to give me face. The Tang clan's infighting isn't as simple as you think. Why don't you come back with me? Give me a chance to fight for you. Tang Li's face was sincere, but he was laughing inside. Why didn't he realize he was such a good liar? Once he settled Ningjing, he could probably pick all the famous flowers in the world. Of course, his sister-in-law was out of the question. He'd been waiting for Ningjing to bring up this topic for a long time. Meanwhile, his father and mother had made ample preparations in the Tang clan as well, ready to play along with him at any time. Ningjing wanted the Tang clan's weapons, but they had their eyes on her arms trade. Ningjing's expression was reluctant. Fine, I'll give you one chance. Let's agree that if you can't control the Tang clan's assassination weapons, you'll come back to live with me at Cloud Realm Trade Consortium in a year's time. A year later, her elder brother's ban would be lifted, and she'd have plenty of ways to return to her maternal family. Actually, there was no need for her to bring Tangli back to Cloud Realm Trade Consortium. The marriage was already set in stone, so the consortium could forget about marrying her off to another man. Still, she wanted to bring this noisy bastard back and torture him well. Looking at Tangli, Ning Jing silently swore in her letter that she would not only control the Tang clan's low-level assassination weapons through Tangli in a year's time to develop Cloud Realm Trade Consortium's arms trade, but also bring Tangli back to the consortium. With that, the two of them came to an agreement. Tangli was delighted as he strode towards Ning Jing. Ning Jing finally gave him a better look and returned his jacket. But Tangli didn't want it. Wear it. The winds are cold in the mountains. Get on. I'll carry you back. Both horses were gone, and there was still a long way to go to the docks. Ning Jing was truly tired, so she couldn't ask for more. She immediately jumped onto Tangli's back. Only then did she notice the bite mark on his shoulder. It was bleeding, a mark she'd left for him. Be good and sleep. I'll wake you up when we get to the boat and prepare something good for you to eat. Tangli's doting tone was enough to make a person drown. Ning Jing didn't reply, but a cold smile hung on her face. She didn't fall asleep the entire time, not because she didn't trust Tangli, but because she couldn't fall asleep staring at the wound on his shoulder. In the end, she took out a handkerchief and carefully wiped away the blood on Tang Li's shoulder. Tang Li and Ning Jing's battle over the arms trade was about to begin, while Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi were on their way to Celestial Mountain. They traveled day and night. Long Fei Yi only did two things along the way: take care of many urgent matters and explain the internal struggles of Celestial Mountain to Han Yunxi. Han Yunxi only did two things as well: listen to Long Fei Yi talk about Celestial Mountain and sleep to cultivate. After traveling for more than 10 days, they arrived at the foot of Celestial Mountain on time. Celestial Mountain was the name of a continuous mountain range, and it was also the name of the highest peak in this mountain range. Tianshan Kenzo was the location of Celestial Mountain. There were a total of 5 mountains in this mountain range. From the south to the north, it was like a staircase. The mountains were next to each other, and each mountain was taller than the previous one. The 5th mountain in the north was Celestial Mountain. Long Fei Ye's horse carriage stopped at the top of the first mountain. Han Yunxi got off the carriage and was shocked by the scenery in front of her. She saw. Chapter 7:10. As soon as Han Yunxi got off the carriage, she was stunned by the scenery in front of her. Her impression of Heaven Mountain had always been that it was mysterious. However, at this moment, standing at the top of the first mountain of Heaven Mountain, looking up at the long and towering mountains in the distance, she could not help but feel awe. These 5 mountains were like stairs to heaven, each taller than the last. It was as if stepping on them would lead one to the Nantian Gate of the 9 heavens. Other than the first mountain that Han Yunxi and Long Fei Yi were on, the top of the 4 mountains in front of them were all covered in snow. Looking from afar, the white snow and the blue sky contrasted each other, clean and sacred. Han Yunxi looked at the white snow and blue sky from afar. It took a long time for her to recover. Even though the deep mountains were sacred and clean, how dark and dangerous were there in Heaven Mountain. In this world, no matter where you went, it was the same. Beneath the beauty was filth. If you were weak, you would be drowned in the filth. If you were not strong enough, you could only wallow in the filth. Only when you were strong could you have the confidence to emerge from the mud unsullied. Only then could you have the capital to make yourself clean. Han Yunxi looked carefully and realized that the distance between the mountains was very far. If they walked, they would have to climb over 4 mountains to reach the foot of Heaven Mountain. This meant that they would have to go up and down the mountain 4 times before they had the chance to climb the real Heaven Mountain. Not to mention how far the distance between the mountains was and how many days it would take to walk. Not to mention the dangers in the mountains. Even the top of the 4 mountains in front of them, which were still covered in snow, might not be able to reach the top. Therefore, to reach the top of Heaven Mountain, it was not feasible to climb the mountain on foot. Even a lightness arts expert like Long Fei wouldn't be able to fly between the 2 mountains. The mountains were dangerous and tall. Even the yellow crane could not pass them, and the monkeys wanted to climb them. To reach Heaven Mountain, one had to take the only path that Heaven Mountain had left for the world. Han Yunqi quickly noticed the bamboo suspension bridge between the first and second mountains. It stretched from the peak of the first mountain to the gorge between the two mountains, all the way to the middle of the second. She looked back at Long Fei Yi and asked, "Is this the only path?" "This is the fastest way," Long Fei remarked. If they didn't find it tiring, they could circle around the mountain, but it was hard to predict the dangers. Moreover, the mountain paths were difficult to traverse, so it would take at least a month to reach the peak. "Let's go and take a look at that bridge." They were still some distance away, so Han Yunqi could only see part of the bridge from a distance. She didn't know the details yet. Long Fei Yi brought her to the other side of the mountain and saw that the entrance to the bamboo bridge was sealed by a row of iron chains. There were two white-clothed imperial bodyguards standing on the left and right sides of the bridge. Not far from the bridge, there was a small temple-like palace, which looked like a sentry box. Although Mount Tianshan was difficult to climb, it was still heavily guarded. Han Yunqi walked closer and carefully observed the bamboo bridge. Only then did she realize that this bamboo bridge spanning between two mountains was very deceptive. This thing couldn't even be called a bridge. At most, it was a bamboo pipe tied with ropes. The two ropes formed an inverted triangle and hung the bamboo pipe together. The handrails on both sides were two parallel ropes. That was all. The most important thing was that the bamboo pipe was very thin and could only allow one person to step on it with one foot. It could not allow two people to walk side by side. To cross this bridge, it was equivalent to stepping on the bamboo pipe and holding onto the ropes on both sides to walk over step by step. It looked like there were no safety measures at all. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew and the entire bamboo bridge swayed with the wind. The wind in the canyon was strong and the bamboo bridge was very long. Even if a few people stood on it, the bridge would still sway. Han Yunqi's eyes flickered with a complicated expression as she watched. The imperial bodyguards at the bridge did not seem to recognize Long Fei Yi. When they saw them walking over, they immediately came forward to stop them. Before the imperial bodyguards could speak, Long Fei Yi flashed a white jade token. On the token was a blood-red sect character. When the imperial bodyguards saw the token, their expressions changed drastically. They immediately retreated and bowed. "Greetings, Senior Brother Yi." Long Fei Yi had not been to Tianshan Mountain for many years. The new imperial bodyguards did not recognize him, but they definitely recognized the white jade token. There were many things about the jade tokens on Tianshan Mountain. Different colors represented different levels. Other than the colorless tokens in the hands of Elder Kinzo and the four Grand Elders, the white token was the highest level. Only the direct disciples of Elder Kinzo and the four Grand Elders could possess it. The characters on the jade tokens represented different factions. The sect character represented Elder Kinzo and was a direct disciple of the sect master. Therefore, Long Fei Yi's white jade token represented that he was a direct disciple of Elder Kinzo. Elder Kinzo only had two disciples, Duanmu Yao and Long Fei Yi. Everyone on Tianshan Mountain knew this. Besides the sect character, the white jade token also had the characters for heart, scripture, sword, and precepts. They represented Lockhart Courtyard, scripture depository, sword depository, and abstinence courtyard respectively. These two depositories and courtyards were controlled by the four Grand Elders of Tianshan Mountain. Among them, Head Elder Tsangchiozi was in charge of Lockhart Courtyard, which controlled Tianshan Kinzo's Nirvana Heart Sutra. There were many sets of Tianshan sword skills, but only one Heart Sutra. To learn Tianshan sword skills, one had to cultivate the Nirvana Heart Sutra. Anyone who cultivated the Nirvana Heart Sutra had to undergo a seal to permanently seal away the unrighteous chi in their bodies. Tsangchiozi's Lockhart Courtyard not only controlled the Nirvana Heart Sutra, but also the Lockhart Seal. Besides Tianshan Kinzo's direct disciples, all disciples of Tianshan Mountain had to stay in Lockhart Courtyard for a year or two before beginning their studies. Then they could begin cultivating the Nirvana Heart Sutra. Internal cultivation sutras were the foundation of swordsmanship, so Lockhart Courtyard's status on Tianshan Mountain was self-evident. Unless absolutely necessary, no one wanted to offend Lockhart Courtyard members. The disciples of Tianshan Mountain all supported Song Qiuzi, so no one dared to show him any disrespect. Because of Lockhart Courtyard's power and Song Qiuzi's extraordinary martial arts, Elder Kinzo often ignored sect affairs. Over the past decade or so, Song Qiuzi's influence had far surpassed that of the other three elders. Sometimes, he could even act as the sect head and make decisions on important matters. The two guards recognized Long Fei Yi, but didn't know who Han Yunqi was. When they saw Long Fei Yi holding Han Yunqi's hand, they hesitated over how to greet him. At this moment, a figure suddenly flew in from the side of the palace like a gust of wind. Han Yunqi didn't even get a good look before she heard a coquettish voice say, "Senior brother Yi, you're finally back. Exiner missed you so much." This was the second time Han Yunqi had heard a woman call Long Fei Yi senior brother after Duanmu Yao. Although it had nothing to do with Duanmu Yao, Han Yunqi still felt uncomfortable hearing it. She examined the woman before her and saw that this Exiner was petite and had a pretty face. Her eyes were especially bright as she looked at Long Fei Yi. She wore a white jade pendant at her waist with the character for sword written on it. Without a doubt, she was a disciple of hidden sword depositories of high status. While Han Yunqi studied Exiner studied Han Yunqi as well. Finally, her gaze rested on Han Yunqi's interlocked hand with Long Fei Yi's. There was one emotion that women couldn't hide, and that was jealousy. Exiner was no exception, and the jealousy in her eyes was about to overflow. Long Fei Yi didn't even remember who this woman called Exiner was and didn't intend to pay any attention to her. Who knew that Exiner would laugh and say, "Senior brother Yi, those who don't know martial arts are not allowed to enter Celestial Mountain." Although they spent most of their time in Celestial Mountain, the female disciples of Celestial Mountain would never miss any news about Long Fei Yi. Especially when it came to the woman beside him, they would try their best to find out more about her. This Han Yunqi didn't know any martial arts and only knew some unorthodox poison techniques. What right did she have to gain Long Fei Yi's favor? God knows what kind of charm she used to seduce Long Fei Yi. Being Long Fei Yi's woman meant that she was destined to be the enemy of all women in the world. Han Yunqi had been through hundreds of battles and was already used to this kind of hostility. She even started to enjoy it. Learning martial arts is so tiring and boorish. Of all the things a girl could do, why did she have to learn martial arts? She's making herself neither a man nor a woman and can't even get married. Han Yunqi purposely hooked her arm around Long Fei Yi's and snuggled up to him. Imitating Exiner's coy tone, she continued, "I don't know martial arts. In any case, Long Fei Yi, you have to always stay by my side and love me, dote on me, and protect me." As she spoke, she raised a finger and lazily looked at it. Unhurriedly, she continued, "Protect me and don't let anyone harm a single finger of mine." Bickering with Han Yunqi would only lead to death by her poisonous tongue. Exiner was so angry that smoke almost came out of her nostrils. Just as she was about to retort, Long Fei Yi grabbed Han Yunqi's hand and gently bit her finger. How could the aloof and proud Duke of Qin do such a thing to a woman? How could his lips touch a woman? Exiner didn't want to believe it, but she couldn't help but like Long Fei Yi's action. How she wished that Long Fei Yi had bitten her. What would it feel like? What would it feel like? A numbing sensation flowed from Han Yunqi's finger to her entire body like an electric current. Fortunately, he quickly let go of her. Otherwise, she didn't know if she would have collapsed in his arms. "Why aren't you opening the lock?" Long Fei Yi questioned the guards. The two guards were also shocked by Long Fei Yi's bite. Only now did they regain their senses and hurriedly opened the iron chains to let Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqi onto the bamboo bridge. Long Fei Yi had the coachman, Uncle Gao, wait in the palace and only brought Su Donglin up the mountain. It wasn't that he was underestimating the enemy, but that he had his own forces on Tianshan. Su Donglin used the bridge as a stepping stone to soar into the air. He used his qinggong to open up a path for them. Only now did Han Yunqi realize that the bamboo bridge wasn't for walking. It was only for stepping. It seemed that Exiner's mockery about her not knowing martial arts made sense. However, she had Long Fei Yi with her, so she wasn't afraid. "Hold on tight." Long Fei Yi was in a good mood. He told Han Yunqi to hold on tight to him, But in fact, he hugged her first. With a tap of his foot, he soared into the air. His figure was handsome and carefree. Even after he left, Exion was still dumbfounded. Of course, Exion was just a small peach blossom. There was a bigger peach blossom waiting for Han Yunqi. As soon as Long Fei Yi and the others arrived at the foot of the mountain, all the important figures on the mountain peak knew. Could Han Yunqi successfully cross the bamboo bridge? Chapter 7:11. The distance between the first and second mountains was the furthest. Even for an expert like Long Fei Yi, he had to use the bridge 5 or 6 times to cross it. However, it had to be said that the scenery here was very good. Long Fei Yi deliberately slowed down to let Han Yunqi take her time to enjoy the scenery. She remembered the first time this guy carried her and flew. Han Yunqi was both scared and surprised. But now, she was already used to it. It wasn't that she was no longer afraid of heights, but she believed that the man carrying her could really protect her. Long Fei Yi, the first time you carried me and flew, I was really scared, said Han Yunqi. What were you scared of? Asked Long Fei Yi. I was scared that you would throw me down if you were unhappy, replied Han Yunqi. Long Fei Yi was stunned at first, but then he laughed out loud. Would this prince? Yes. Han Yunqi was very sure, and then she added, You definitely would back then. Then what about now? Would you? Asked Long Fei Yi again. Definitely not. Han Yunqi was still very sure. Long Fei Yi nodded and didn't say much. After a long time, he suddenly said, Han Yunqi, actually you wouldn't have back then either. Definitely not. Han Yunqi didn't agree. She still remembered how cold, indifferent, and ruthless he was back then. It seemed like he would get annoyed if she said anything more, and he would just ignore her every time. Han Yunqi was about to argue, but Long Fei Yi asked, Do you know why you wouldn't have? I don't know. Han Yunqi waited for him to say the reason, and then refuted. Unexpectedly, Long Fei Yi smiled and sighed faintly. This prince also doesn't know why, but in any case, I didn't abandon you. Because he liked her long ago? Long Fei Yi, when did you start to like me? Was it earlier than me? Yes, why? Han Yunqi sighed softly and unconsciously hugged him tightly. At this time, Su Donglin, who was leading the way, suddenly turned back. Master, there's someone blocking the way. It's a woman. Su Donglin was indeed Han Yunqi's shadow guard. His words were obviously meant for Han Yunqi. It's already April. Why are there still so many peach blossoms? Han Yunqi sighed. The meaning behind her words was clear, but it was a pity that Su Donglin did not understand. He honestly said, Princess Consort, the temperature of the heaven mountain is lower than the bottom of the mountain, so the peach blossoms bloom later. Right now is the time when the peach blossoms are blooming. Is that so? How vigorous is it? Han Yunqi asked lazily. It's all over the mountain. You'll be able to see it when you get to the front. The entire mountainside is filled with flowers, like a sea of flowers. It's very beautiful. Su Donglin replied excitedly. Han Yunqi was very satisfied. She smiled and did not say anything else. Su Donglin was about to speak when he suddenly met Long Fei Yi's icy gaze. Although he did not understand where he went wrong, he knew that he must have said something wrong. He trembled a few times and hurriedly retreated to the side, not daring to speak again. Long Fei Yi carried Han Yunqi and continued forward after using the bamboo bridge as leverage. He did not take Su Donglin's report to heart. Actually, there was another reason why he did not like to come to Heaven Mountain. The female disciples were too annoying. Not long after, he saw a woman standing in the air in front of him. She was dressed in a light yellow long dress. The hem of her dress was 3 feet long and flowed down. She held a light muslin shawl in her hand, looking elegant and light. Her hair was combed into a bun that was decorated with light yellow pearls. She was beautiful and noble. She stood in the air, her long dress fluttering in the wind. Her ink-black hair fluttered in the wind. She was like a fairy who had descended into the mortal world. Everything about her was beautiful, and she was perfectly matched. However, her face was very ugly. Some people had average looks but could make up for it with makeup and clothes. However, some people were destined to be unable to cover up their lack of looks no matter how they dressed up. Han Yunqi only felt that it was a pity for the long dress. "Who's this Peach Blossom?" she asked softly. Long Fei clearly did not take the newcomer seriously. He carried Han Yunqi and continued flying forward. Song Qiuying. Han Yunqi only felt that the name was very familiar but could not recall it. However, she was too lazy to ask. Why would she need to know these unimportant names? Song Qiuying was indifferent to Long Fei and Han Yunqi approaching. However, when Long Fei and Han Yunqi passed by her, she said cold, "Long Fei, if someone without martial arts wants to go to Heaven Mountain, they have to cross this bridge step by step. Have you forgotten?" Long Fei did not answer and continued forward. Song Qiuying suddenly drew her sword and several sword-wielding women flew out from the abyss under the bridge. They lined up to block Long Fei's path. "Get lost," Long Fei said. "What if I say no?" Song Qiuying asked back. Long Fei was about to make a move when a powerful sword chi suddenly rushed over. Then, an old woman over 50 years old flew over with a sword. Han Yunqi noticed the jade pendant on her waist. It was a transparent jade token. Besides Elder Kinzo, only the 4 great elders had transparent jade tokens. Among the 4 great elders, only the 4th elder, Granny Yu, who was in charge of the abstinence courtyard, was a woman. Song Qiuying was overjoyed when she saw Granny Yu. "Aunt Yu, senior brother Yi has violated the sect rules. Do you want me to call my father?" Song Qiuying seemed to be making things difficult for Long Fei, but she was actually looking for trouble with Han Yunqi. If she could force Long Fei to abide by the sect's rules, then Han Yunqi would have to cross the bamboo bridge step by step to reach Celestial Mountain. Not to mention a woman, even a man who did not know martial arts would find it impossible to cross this bridge. Those who didn't fall would be scared to death. The abstinence courtyard doesn't have jurisdiction over the sect rules. "Why do you need your father?" Granny Yu asked coldly. Her expression was cold and solemn, and her words were methodical, exuding a majesty that could not be disobeyed. She was a neutral party in the conflict between the factions on Tianshan Mountain. She was not biased towards anyone. Someone had reported Long Fei for violating the sect rules, so she naturally had to come in person. Aunt Yu is right. Qiuying was too rash. Song Qiuying retreated to the side. In fact, the person who had reported Long Fei to the abstinence courtyard was none other than her subordinates. Song Qiuying controlled many industries on Sky Mountain. Coupled with her identity as the first elder's daughter, she was considered an all-powerful figure among the younger generation. She had not dared to go out in the past 2 years because of the embarrassment of her marriage. If she hadn't learned that Long Fei had brought Han Yunqi up the mountain, she wouldn't have come out so easily today. Although she had obediently followed her father's orders to get engaged to Tangli, she still loved him. In the end, the one she truly loved was Long Fei. She knew that her father and Long Fei were destined to be irreconcilable enemies one day, so she could only hide her feelings in her heart. She accepted that she would never be able to have Long Fei in this lifetime. But she couldn't just stand by and watch Long Fei bring another woman up Sky Mountain. Sky Mountain was her Tsang clan's territory. She would never let Han Yunqi have it easy. Granny Yu looked at Han Yunqi with disdain. She hated useless women like her the most. Aside from causing trouble for men, they didn't know how to do anything else. What was she doing here if she didn't know martial arts? Of course, she had no right to meddle in Long Fei's private affairs. His master should be in charge of such matters, while she only cared about the sect rules. Coldly, she said, "Fei, we're not even halfway across the bridge yet. Take her back and walk step by step across the bridge. This old woman will pretend nothing happened. But if you insist on going forward, don't blame the abstinence hall for not giving your master face." Of course, Long Fei knew the sect rules, but he didn't expect these people to investigate Han Yunqi so thoroughly. They even knew she didn't know martial arts. The abstinence hall didn't involve itself in factional disputes. Moreover, Granny Yu was a just and impartial person. Although it wasn't easy to win her over, he couldn't afford to offend her. Moreover, this was the sect's rule. Even Granny Yu had personally stepped in. If he were to openly break the rules, he would be caught red-handed before he even reached the mountain. It wasn't wise to force his way through, much less Han Yunqi. Long Fei didn't hesitate to circulate his qi and channel his internal energy into Han Yunqi's body. After all, Han Yunqi wasn't a martial arts wastrel. On the contrary, her talents were twice as good as Duanmu Yao's. She didn't even need to be sealed to receive Tianshan Kinzo's internal energy. As long as she had internal energy, with her talents, he only needed to teach her 1 or 2 sword moves, and she'd be able to learn them immediately. Although this would waste a lot of his internal energy, he was willing to risk it all. The crowd was alarmed at the sight. Long Fei Ye's actions were too risky. Fei, have you gone mad? She has no foundation in internal energy at all. Moreover, she hasn't been sealed yet. If you rashly transfer your internal energy to her, you'll definitely go mad. Granny Yu scolded. Only then did Han Yunqi realize what Long Fei Yi was planning. She quickly pushed his hand aside. Long Fei Yi, I don't want it. It's fine. Be good. Long Fei Yi murmured. I don't want it. Han Yunqi gripped his hand tightly. Even if I don't go mad, I still don't want you to waste any of your internal energy. I won't allow it. He had a lot to face on this trip to Celestial Mountain. She wouldn't let herself be a burden to him. She was here to help him. They were going to leave the mountain together before mid-autumn. Long Fei Yi was about to coax her when Han Yunqi said coldly, If you insist, I'll wait for you at the foot of the mountain. Trust me, I can walk across. There's no room for discussion. Long Fei Ye's tone was cold. He refused to budge. Han Yunqi took his hand and intertwined her fingers with his. Long Fei Yi, I trust you. I trust that you've never abandoned me in the past, nor will you do so now. Hold my hand and cross the bridge. We'll walk together, all right? Han Yunqi's eyes held not only determination and stubbornness, but also trust. Long Fei Yi could ignore her stubbornness and determination, but he couldn't ignore her trust in him. Finally, he nodded. All right, I'll walk with you. He ignored Granny Yu and Song Qiuying as he carried Han Yunqi and flew across the bridge. Granny Yu didn't expect Han Yunqi to have such courage. Her impression of Han Yunqi had changed a little, but only a little. Min, go and keep an eye on her. Make sure she walks over step by step, Granny Yu said cold. She believed in Long Fei Ye's credibility, but she didn't believe in Han Yunqi. That last looks so weak that she can't even stand up to a gust of wind. Who knows, she might cry the moment she stands on the bridge. Yes. Several maidservants obeyed and left. Granny Yu landed in the middle of the bridge and waited. Annie Yu, I'll go take a look too. Song Qiuying hurriedly chased after her. She couldn't wait to see Han Yunqi make a fool of herself. Chapter 712. Han Yunqi and Long Fei Yi returned to the end of the bamboo bridge. As soon as they set foot on the ground, Song Qiuying and a group of female disciples flew towards them. The woman named Xian immediately guessed what was going on when she saw this scene. She wanted to use the rules of the bamboo bridge to make things difficult for Han Yunqi, but she still feared Long Fei Yi. Most of the female disciples of Celestial Mountain both adored and feared Long Fei Yi, but Song Qiuying was different. She was the head elder's only daughter and the eldest young miss of Lockhart Courtyard. Besides Duanmu Yao, no one else in the younger generation of Celestial Mountain dared to talk back to her. With Lockhart Courtyard as her backing, Song Qiuying naturally didn't fear Long Fei Yi as much as the others. Good news never left the house, but bad news spread far and wide. Before Song Qiuying and the rest even set foot on the ground, many disciples flew over from all directions. And yet, all of them were female disciples. It was obvious that they were all here to watch a good show. Han Yunqi's face turned gloomy as she looked at the graceful figures, their faces like peach blossoms as they danced in the air like celestial fairies. Long Fei Yi was very taciturn as he observed Han Yunqi's expression. His gaze never left her face and his lips were pursed tightly. For some reason, he didn't seem to be in a good mood. Han Yunqi suddenly glanced at him, causing Long Fei Yi to avert his gaze. Su Donglin, there are plenty of peach blossoms ahead, but there are plenty here as well. Han Yunqi sighed with emotion. Her voice was very low, but Long Fei Yi heard her clearly. No matter how stupid Su Donglin was, he could still sense the sourness in her words. Resentful of his mistake, he didn't dare to reply. Su Donglin, don't you think so? Han Yunqi asked next. Su Donglin hung his head, and wished he could find a hole to hide in. He and the other shadow guard had always envied and hated Chu Shifeng. They all thought that following His Highness Duke of Qin and esteemed Wang Fei's side was a cushy job, but only after experiencing it firsthand did they realize how bitter it was. If he fawned over one, he would offend the other. Being stuck between a rock and a hard place was a tragedy. Su Dongdong, I'm asking you a question, Han Yunshi suddenly shouted. Su Donglin was shocked, and Long Fei immediately looked over. It was as if Han Yunshi was not calling Su Donglin, but him. Su Donglin timidly glanced at His Highness Duke of Qin. He could actually see the embarrassment and nervousness in his eyes. Finally, Su Donglin realized that esteemed Wang Fei wasn't actually asking him, but His Highness Duke of Qin. The safest thing for him to do was to remain silent. As expected, Han Yunshi didn't press Su Donglin any further, but stared at Long Fei with questioning eyes. Long Fei immediately averted his gaze and took her hand. I'll take you across the bridge. Long Fei, you're feeling guilty. Han Yunshi murmured. No. Long Fei hadn't done anything wrong. So what was he feeling guilty about? Then why don't you dare to look at me? Han Yunshi asked again. Long Fei met her gaze. Are you nervous? Han Yunshi asked again. No. Long Fei denied. You clearly are. Han Yunshi could tell. Long Fei brushed aside her bangs to block her piercing eyes. Do you mind? He asked. Yes. Han Yunshi admitted it openly. Long Fei's hand stiffened, and Han Yunshi laughed. Long Fei looked at her, not knowing what to do with her. He didn't know if she was really unhappy or faking it. He didn't know if she really minded or was just joking with him. He couldn't figure out her thoughts and emotions on certain matters. Was he not smart enough? Or were women just so fickle? He frowned as he looked at Han Yunshi's crafty eyes and smiled. There was a hint of helplessness and doting in his smile. Long Fei, if I successfully cross this bridge, will you reward me? This was Han Yunshi's first time asking for a reward. You'll definitely cross it. Long Fei was certain. What do you want? Tell me. I'll tell you when we cross it. Han Yunshi looked mysterious. At this moment, Song Qiuying and the others walked over and landed on the cliff by the bridge. Qin Wangfei has a backbone. She must cross this bridge. Sisters, we must cheer her on today, Song Qiuying said loudly. As soon as her voice fell, the crowd booed. On the surface, they snorted at Song Qiuying's words, but in fact, they were booing Han Yunshi. Song Qiuying was very satisfied and said, Aya, although no one has ever broken the record, Qin Wangfei is confident. Everyone, let's encourage her since she has such confidence. Who knows, she might really break the record today. The response was even louder than before. Clearly, no one believed her. Han Yunshi felt that this kind of provocation was really boring. She wasn't affected at all. Long Fei treated the surrounding people as air. Ignoring everyone else around them, the two of them walked hand in hand to the side of the bridge. Long Fei stepped onto the bridge first and faced Han Yunshi, planning to use the backwards method to walk forward. This time, everyone consciously quieted down. Song Qiuying was also nervous and anxiously reminded him, Senior Brother Yi, if you use martial arts, it's against the rules. People without martial arts had to walk over step by step. Those who helped her also couldn't use martial arts. Long Fei naturally knew this restriction. Otherwise, he only needed to use his martial arts to step on the suspension bridge and stabilize it. No matter how strong the wind was, the suspension bridge wouldn't sway and Han Yunshi would be able to smoothly cross. The biggest difficulty in crossing this bamboo bridge was that there was nothing fixed on the bridge. One had to rely on one's own strength to find balance. Only after maintaining balance could one continue to walk forward. Moreover, to continue walking forward, one had to take into account balance with every step. The two ropes hanging the bamboo tube were loose, and the two handrails on both sides were also loose. It was really difficult to maintain balance from the beginning of the bridge to the end. Even Long Fei had to spend a lot of effort to maintain balance. He stepped on the bamboo tube and exerted all his strength on the bamboo tube. As a result, the two ropes hanging the bamboo tube were pulled taut. He didn't pull the handrails but kept his hands in front and back to maintain balance. Hold my hand and don't touch the ropes on both sides, he whispered. Han Yunqi could see that Long Fei was using brute force to maintain balance. He didn't use any martial arts at all. She first reached out to hold Long Fei's hand, and then stepped on the bamboo tube with one foot and the other on the cliff to support her weight. She immediately felt the sweat on Long Fei's hand. This man only took one step, and it was already very difficult to maintain his balance. If she stepped on it, he would have to bear her balance and her weight. This bridge was so long. How long would it take to reach the end? Looking at Long Fei's furrowed brows and the thin layer of sweat on his temples, Han Yunqi didn't step on it for a long time. She couldn't bear to. She couldn't bear to see him work so hard. Come up, don't be afraid. Long Fei wasn't urging, but comforting. Han Yunqi's brows were furrowed, and she didn't move for a long time. No way, you're afraid of this? Han Yunqi, how are you going to walk over? Song Qiuying felt that she had overestimated Han Yunqi. She thought that Han Yunqi would step on the bridge and cry, but she didn't expect that Han Yunqi didn't even dare to step on the bridge. If you're afraid, then don't walk. You're wasting everyone's time. She doesn't dare to step on the bridge even with senior brother Ye's protection? Hee. No wonder she doesn't know martial arts. A coward can't learn martial arts, huh? The surrounding mocking voices gradually increased, but Long Fei still patiently comforted her. It's okay, trust me. At most, you won't be able to stand steadily. I'll carry you and fly over. If it's against the rules, then so be it. Han Yunqi still didn't understand. She stared at Long Fei's feet and seemed to be distracted. The surrounding laughter grew louder and louder. Long Fei was very patient with Han Yunqi, but he didn't want to force her. Anyone would be afraid of a bottomless abyss under their feet. He tightened his grip on Han Yunqi's hand and was about to transfer his internal energy to her when Han Yunqi used her strength and yanked him up the cliff. Long Fei realized for the first time that Han Yunqi was so strong. What was this woman trying to do? Going back on your word? You're not going? Song Qiuying chuckled. She knew that Han Yunqi didn't have the courage. From the beginning to the end, no matter what Song Qiuying said, Han Yunqi ignored her. This time was no exception. She pulled Long Fei and whispered in his ear. This scene made Song Qiuying especially embarrassed and made the surrounding people jealous. Song Qiuying's eyes flashed with hatred and she asked coldly, Senior brother Yi, are you sure you're not going to cross the bridge? Unfortunately, Long Fei listened carefully to Han Yunqi's whisper, and the corners of his mouth curled up as if he was smiling. Heavens! Senior brother Yi is actually smiling? He looks so good when he smiles. What did Han Yunqi say to him? Everyone didn't have time to be jealous as they were all curious. What could make Senior brother Yi smile? The hatred in Song Qiuying's eyes deepened. She finally understood why Duanmu Yao hated Han Yunqi so much. It was because Han Yunqi had too many exceptions. However, it was useless even if she was an exception. She couldn't be an exception. If she couldn't cross the bridge, she couldn't go up the mountain. If she couldn't go up the mountain, she couldn't see the sect master. She had already heard about Duanmu Yao's matter from her father. No matter why Long Fei came back this time, it must be to bring Han Yunqi to see the sect master. The sect master hadn't left the mountain for many years. He definitely wouldn't leave the mountain for Han Yunqi. She wanted to see how Long Fei could bring Han Yunqi up the mountain. In any case, she wouldn't leave today and would stay here to watch. After Han Yunqi and Long Fei finished whispering, Long Fei immediately sent a signal flare into the sky. What was this for? Soon, a group of black-clothed disciples flew over from all directions. This time, they were all male disciples and their numbers far exceeded the number of female disciples present. This made everyone even more curious. Could it be that Han Yunqi asked Long Fei to summon these people? What were they doing here? These black-robed disciples were all outstanding disciples of Sky Mountain. They were young, but their martial arts cultivation was extremely high. Most importantly, all of them were handsome and handsome. They were pleasing to the eye no matter how one looked at them. It could be said that the most outstanding male disciples of Tianshan Kenzo were all here. They walked toward the bridge as soon as they arrived. Song Qiuying and the other women were quickly pushed to the side while Han Yunqi was like the world's noblest princess, surrounded and protected by the most outstanding princes. The surrounding gazes could kill, but Han Yunshi calmly accepted them. She smiled at Long Fei Yi and said, "Let's cross the bridge." How are they going to cross the bridge with so many people? Chapter 7:13. Han Yunshi couldn't bear to let Long Fei Yi work too hard, so she could only find his handsome junior brothers to share the burden with Long Fei Yi. If this was a form of selfishness and love, she'd never admit it even if she was beaten to death. This was clearly because she was smart and quick-witted, alright? Long Fei Yi had his junior brothers come closer and explain the situation to them, so they knew what to do. The strongest among them did as Long Fei had done and stepped onto the bridge, one hand outstretched in front of him while the other pressed behind him to keep his balance. The other person immediately grabbed his hand and steadied himself, then stepped onto the bridge one after the other. As soon as he stepped onto the bridge swayed violently. Fortunately, that person quickly steadied himself. Han Yunshi silently rejoiced at the sight. Thank goodness she'd thought of a human bridge. Otherwise, with her strength and sense of balance, she really would have fallen off the bridge and dragged Long Fei Yi down with her. She'd be a laughingstock then. After the second person steadied himself, the third person stepped forward. He didn't step onto the bridge, but stood at the edge of the cliff to grab the second person's outstretched hand. The two people on the bridge borrowed the third person's strength to carefully back away. Only after one person had moved away did the third person step onto the bridge. In a short while, the entire bamboo bridge was filled with handsome male disciples. They lined up from one end of the bridge to the other end. When each person was trying to maintain their balance, they would hold the hands of the person in front and behind them. While helping the person in front and behind to maintain their balance, they also helped the entire group to maintain their balance. Granny Yu took to the skies to make way for them. She shook her head in disbelief. Who came up with this idea? It's too clever. Master, it was Han Yunshi, the disciple beside her reported. Granny Yu was even more incredulous. She nodded thoughtfully. Brave and resourceful, calm in the face of danger. Hee, no wonder Fei took a liking to her. Master, why didn't senior brother Yi let Han Yunshi go up Celestial Mountain to find a master? With senior brother Yi personally recommending her, there's bound to be someone willing to accept her as a disciple. Can't she cross the bridge like this? The disciple asked curiously. She doesn't know any martial arts at her age. Looks like she's not suitable for martial arts. Granny Yu's conjecture did not make sense. After all, it wouldn't make sense for Long Fei Ye's woman not to know martial arts. Granny Yu quickly left, leaving the female disciples present dumbfounded. Only now did they understand what was going on. If they hadn't seen Han Yunshi whispering to Long Fei Yi, they would never have guessed that Han Yunshi was the one who came up with this idea. Although she didn't want to admit it, that was the truth. Han Yunshi was very smart. Song Qiuying shook her head in disbelief. She tried her best to find a flaw. Unfortunately, Han Yunshi's method didn't violate the sect's rules. According to the sect's rules, other than those who went up the mountain to learn martial arts, those who didn't know any martial arts had to cross the bridge step by step. Those who helped her were also not allowed to use martial arts to cross the bridge. The reason for this rule was that there was a period of time when many people went up to Celestial Mountain to ask for help every day. In order to stop these people, the previous head of Kinzo set this rule. If anyone could cross the bridge on foot, they would agree to help. After that, no one went up to Celestial Mountain to ask for help. This rule was continued and became the sect's rule today. In fact, Tianshan Kinzo had never been involved in worldly disputes since ancient times. Even those who knew martial arts couldn't cross the bridge easily. If Han Yunshi hadn't been brought here by Long Fei Yi, she might not even have the chance to see this bridge. Song Qiuying thought for a long time, but still couldn't find a flaw. Han Yunshi's idea was simply amazing. Finally, Long Fei Yi also went up the bridge. He was the first one to go up the bridge. The junior brother behind him didn't dare to hold his hand. He could only put his hand on his shoulder and exert strength. After Long Fei Yi stood firm, he stretched out his hand from Han Yunshi's. He smiled dotingly as if inviting her. Looking at his big hand, many of the women present had their imaginations run wild. That was the hand that they had held so many times in their dreams. Unfortunately, none of them dared to step forward. Even the powerful Song Chioying could only watch helplessly. Han Yunxi smiled faintly and elegantly placed her slender hand in Long Fei Ye's big hand. Long Fei Ye took her other hand and led her across the bridge. The people behind took a step back, leaving space on the bridge. Han Yunxi stepped on the bridge gracefully. The entire iron bridge was stepped on very firmly by the men. She didn't even sway when she stepped on it. This was the first step. Soon, everyone stepped back and continued to leave space. Han Yunxi continued to move forward steadily. After taking 4 or 5 steps, she started to feel the sway. But the male disciples who stayed on the cliff quickly came up the bridge. Just like before, they occupied the space above the bridge one by one to ensure that both sides of the bridge were stable. In this way, a long line of people continued to move towards the end of the bridge. The line was all men. Only Han Yunxi was a woman, and she was firmly protected in the middle. She and Long Fei Yi held hands and faced each other. When Long Fei Yi took a step back, she would take a step forward. There was no one on either side of the bottomless abyss. But the front and back were all top experts from Tianshan Kinzhou. Long Fei Yi was also beside her. What was Han Yunxi afraid of? As she walked, she felt that her footsteps were light and graceful. With Long Fei leading her in and out, she really wanted to dance a waltz with him. The scene between Han Yunxi and Long Fei Yi was beautiful and elegant. But the whole scene was spectacular and gorgeous. The female disciples on the cliff who had come to watch the show all watched intently. For a moment, they all came back to their senses. They only felt that everything in front of them was like a dream, a beautiful and luxurious dream. Unfortunately, they were not the female lead in the dream. Song Chioying was entranced. Even if this beautiful dream didn't belong to her, she still couldn't help but immerse herself in it. She hoped that she would never wake up from this dream. It turned out that even if she could see the love that she couldn't get, she would feel satisfied. Soon, everyone woke up from the dream. That was because Han Yunxi, under the protection of Long Fei and the other disciples, had safely crossed the bridge and reached the second peak. Once they woke up from the dream, everyone returned to reality. The reality was that Han Yunxi was pampered and in the limelight. Song Chioying, whose plan had failed, flew into the sky in anger and chased after her. Han Yunxi, what kind of ability is it to rely on so many men to cross the bridge? If you have the guts, let's compete. Don't rely on anyone but yourself. Let's see who can cross the bridge first, Song Chioying said seriously. Han Yunxi looked back and suddenly laughed. Why should I compete with you? What kind of ability is it to rely on men? If you really have the ability, then rely on yourself. Song Chioying questioned. When did I say I have the ability? Han Yunxi pretended to be confused. She wouldn't go back and take the risk just to fight for a chance. She was really afraid of that bridge. If she fell, she would die a horrible death. Song Chioying was angry but still provoked her. Are you afraid? Han Yunxi held Long Fei Ye's hand and said seriously, I'll be afraid if he's not by my side. Song Chioying had been held in high regard since she was young. Other than being wronged because of the Tangli incident, she had never been so aggrieved. She couldn't help but scold, Han Yunxi, you're shameless. Long Fei Yi was about to speak when Han Yunxi stopped him. She didn't like him to interrupt women's matters. She wasn't angry even after being scolded. Instead, she looked at Song Chioying with interest. After a while, she said meaningfully, Oh, I know who you are. You're the fiancé of the Tang sect's young master. I've heard of your name before. What? This woman only found out about her identity now? Song Chioying's name was well known even at the foot of Celestial Mountain. Han Yunxi's words were an insult to her. Song Chioying was furious, but Han Yunxi only looked at her and muttered to herself, thank goodness young Master Tang didn't marry you. Han Yunxi didn't finish her sentence, but it was precisely because she didn't continue that it was all the more ironic. Everything about Song Chioying was good except for her ugliness. Everyone knew that. Tangli hadn't run away because of Song Chioying's ugliness, but Han Yunxi's words made everyone believe that Tangli didn't run away because he thought Song Chioying was ugly. Song Chioying was so angry that she almost burst into tears. You're all bullies. I'll tell my father, Just you wait. She stomped her foot angrily before turning to leave. Long Fei Ye's eyes flashed viciously. Duamu Yao and Song Chiozi had returned to Celestial Mountain a few days ago, and he'd been waiting for them. He'd like to see what kind of show they'd put on in front of his master. Han Yunqi thanked Long Fei Ye's junior brothers before they all withdrew. But none of the female disciples were willing to leave. Han Yunqi crossed the bridge without a hitch, and there were no obstacles ahead. They weren't here to watch Han Yunqi make a fool of herself, but to miss Long Fei Yi. It wasn't easy to see Long Fei Yi, so they couldn't wait to steal a few more glances. After all, once Long Fei Yi reached the peak, it'd be harder for them to see him. The peak was where the head of the Kinzo sect cultivated. How could ordinary disciples enter as they pleased? Now that you've crossed the bridge, what kind of reward do you want? Long Fei Yi never forgot to ask for rewards. This time, Han Yunqi didn't forget either. She glanced at the crowd of onlookers before quickly turning to face Long Fei Yi. What do you want? Speak. Before Long Fei Yi could finish, Han Yunqi cut him off. Long Fei Yi, don't speak. Kiss me. She wanted a kiss from him. This fellow had too many suitors for her to accept. She wanted to declare her ownership in front of everyone. Long Fei Yi gave a start before he stared at Han Yunqi for a long time. Then he suddenly laughed out loud. Compared to her cautious, reserved, and bashful self, he much preferred this side of her. So brave, so honest. Long Fei Yi was very obedient. Without a word, he grabbed Han Yunqi's chin and kissed her fiercely. The kiss grew deeper and more passionate. Beside the bridge, on the cliff, the two of them hugged and kissed passionately. This was the most beautiful scene in the history of Sky Mountain. It was so beautiful that all the peach blossoms on the mountain paled in comparison. Long Fei Yi, did you know? Han Yunqi is actually very timid, but because of your love, she is brave because of it. The kiss was so deep that Han Yunqi almost collapsed in Long Fei Ye's arms. Long Fei Yi was finally willing to let go. The onlookers were no longer important. What was important was what they would encounter when they reached the peak. Chapter 7:14. Once they crossed the bamboo bridge between the first and second peaks, they'd officially entered Celestial Mountain. There were no longer any rules to enter the sect. With Long Fei leading the way, none of the orioles or birds on the path had the strength to cause trouble for Han Yunqi, even if they wanted to. After the passionate kiss, Long Fei allowed the crowd to gossip as he held Han Yunqi's hand and continued to walk forward. The two of them were different in many aspects, but their attitude towards rumors and slanders was almost the same, which was to completely ignore them. Many people would say self-confidence, but true self-confidence required an incomparably strong heart. Only with a strong enough heart could one walk out of an uproar calmly and do as one pleased. Those with low self-esteem would often recognize themselves from other people's evaluations and constantly change themselves to cater to others. In the end, they'd lose themselves. Circling around to the other side of the second mountain, Han Yunqi saw a different scenery. Halfway up the mountain behind the second and third mountains, there were several palaces and pavilions scattered about in picturesque disorder in the forest. Many white-robed disciples were practicing their swords in groups of 3 to 5. White robes and silver swords. Their figures were calm and their swords were nimble. They moved like the clouds and their swords like flowing water, giving off a sense of vitality and dignity. Han Yunqi watched from afar and felt as if all of Celestial Mountain had fallen silent. This was the Tianshan Kinzo she'd imagined. The clamor from the crowd just now, the jealousy and harshness in their hearts, didn't belong to Celestial Mountain. This was a pure land beyond the secular world. Unfortunately, the people here were still people of the secular world. It was no wonder then. Tianshan Kinzo possessed the world's strongest martial arts. Everyone who came here to learn from its master came for the sake of profit. How could this pure land belong to Ningjing? Han Yunqi was well aware that this pure land was the most dangerous place in Cloud Realm's martial arts circles. There was no bamboo bridge between the second and third mountains. Between the two mountains, there was a huge stone sword. It was like a pillar that supported the sky. It fell from the sky and pierced into the valley. It was magnificent and awe-inspiring. Han Yunqi was stunned by the sight. She was about to ask when Long Fei Yi explained, "That was originally a solitary peak. We asked a craftsman to carve it into the shape of a sword. It took 3 years to complete." Long Fei Yi picked up Han Yunqi and used the cliff as leverage to fly forward. Then he used the stone sword as leverage to reach the third mountain in one breath. There was no rope bridge between the third and fourth mountains, only a huge stone sword. Still, Long Fei borrowed strength from the stone sword to reach the fourth level in one breath. Han Yunqi couldn't help but sigh. "Long Fei, I wouldn't have been able to get up without you leading the way. I couldn't go down." "Amen?" Long Fei Yi replied faintly. Han Yunqi seized the chance to say, "Then you have to come down with me." Long Fei Yi didn't reply, but Han Yunqi persisted. "Answer me. I promised you before. Don't you trust me?" Long Fei Yi retorted, "If you lie to me once, I'll treat it as 100 times." Han Yunqi's narrowed eyes were filled with warning. She'd once said these words. "Amen?" Long Fei Yi agreed readily, as if he'd forgotten that he'd once lied to this woman. Along the way, Han Yunqi saw many palaces and pavilions in the forest, as well as many disciples practicing the sword. There were both men and women. She'd always thought that Tianshan Mountain was only located at the top of the fifth mountain in the 2 pavilions and courtyards. She didn't expect there to be so many disciples. No wonder Long Fei Yi could pick out so many outstanding disciples from Tianshan Kinzo and nurture them into Shadow Guard. From the looks of it, Tianshan Mountain was really a big sect. Han Yunqi couldn't see the top of Tianshan Mountain, even though she was standing at the middle of the fourth mountain. They went around to the back of the fourth mountain and saw a suspension bridge from the middle of the fourth mountain to the fifth mountain, Tianshan Mountain. Other than this suspension bridge, Han Yunqi couldn't see anything else. Fog was rising at this time, and most of Tianshan Mountain was covered by clouds. This suspension bridge was different from the bamboo bridge from before. The bridge was very wide, and although it would sway when one stepped on it, they could still stand steadily. Long Fei Yi held Han Yunqi's hand as they crossed the bridge, explaining the different factions of Tianshan Kinzo to her. Tianshan Kinzo only had one type of internal martial arts, but there were many branches of swordsmanship. The disciples that Han Yunqi saw on the way here all belonged to different factions. They all learned the lower and middle ranks of Tianshan Kinzo's sword skills. After entering Tianshan Mountain, they would first go to Zhangqiuzi's Lockhart Courtyard to cultivate internal martial arts. Then they draw lots to be assigned to different factions to learn swordsmanship. The young disciples that Long Fei Yi had found were not only the best of their respective factions, but also the best of Tianshan Mountain's younger generation. Because the Heavenly Sword Conference held once every 10 years and the Heavenly Sword Sect had yet to begin, this batch of young disciples had yet to have the chance to enter the 2 pavilions and 2 courtyards. Currently, the youngest disciples in the 2 pavilions and 2 courtyards were already over 30 years old. Every 10 years, Tianshan Kinzo would hold a celestial sword assembly to pick out new talents. Those who wanted to study swordsmanship under the 4 elders had to pass through layers upon layers of duels at the celestial sword assembly and enter the top 10. Only then could they be promoted, or they'd be stuck in the branch factions forever. Once they entered the top 10, they had the right to climb the mountain and enter the hidden sword depositories to pick a treasure sword of their own. Then they could choose one of the 4 elders to study swordsmanship under their tutelage. The folklore said that Tianshan Kinzo accepted disciples every year, but that was only because of the 4 elders' authority. Each of them could make an exception to accept a disciple without having to go through the celestial sword assembly. An eldest young miss like Zhangqiuying was an exception. She'd been personally taught by Zhangqiuzi since she was young. Although she wasn't very talented, she was still better than the other disciples at the foot of the mountain. When Duamu Yao was still a child in her arms, Western Zhou's imperial clan used all sorts of connections to send her to Celestial Mountain. They wanted to foster her under Zhangqiuzi's tutelage until she grew up to learn martial arts. Back then, Tang Yuan had used all sorts of connections to send the 4-year-old Long Fei Yi up the mountain. By chance, they'd run into Western Zhou's imperial clan. Back then, Zhangqiuzi had accepted plenty of bribes and often broke the rules to recruit more disciples. He didn't teach the new disciples personally, but left them to other disciples. Both families were planning to take Zhangqiuzi as their tutelage, but by chance, Old Kinzo happened to come out of closed-door cultivation on the day of the ceremony and ran into them. Kinzo asked Zhangqiuzi why he'd made an exception, so Zhangqiuzi had no choice but to use the excuse of innate talent. Who knew that old Kinzo would test the girl himself? Not only did he discover that Long Fei Yi was a martial arts prodigy, but he also discovered that Duanmu Yao's dantian was very similar to his late lover's. Thrilled, the sword sect master broke his rule of not accepting any disciples and accepted Duanmu Yao and Long Fei as his disciples. Duanmu Yao had been raised at the peak of Celestial Mountain ever since she was young, while Long Fei Yi had started learning martial arts as soon as he entered the sect. He improved at lightning speed and broke many of Tianshan Kinzo's records. Hearing all this, Han Yunqi finally figured out the ins and outs of the matter. Worried, she asked, Long Fei Yi, the Celestial Sword Conference hasn't started yet, right? It's on the 6th of the 6th month of this year, Long Fei Yi replied. His other reason for coming to Celestial Mountain was the Celestial Sword Conference. The 6th of the 6th month, in other words, it's very likely that your junior brothers will betray you and join Zhangqiuzi's side? Han Yunqi asked. Long Fei Yi had come to Celestial Mountain to deal with Zhangqiuzi and Duanmu Yao. He wanted to help old Kinzo purge these evil forces. However, old Kinzo didn't accept disciples, so Celestial Mountain only had Long Fei Yi and Duanmu Yao as disciples. In terms of numbers, they were few and far between. Meanwhile, the two depositories and courtyards took in disciples every year. In less than 10 years, they'd taken talented disciples from the lower factions. Their strength was self-evident. Here on Celestial Mountain, Long Fei Yi could only take control of the branch factions to strengthen his own power. Once the Celestial Sword Conference began, Long Fei Yi would definitely suffer heavy losses. To these branch faction disciples, the Celestial Sword Conference was a crucial step in their martial arts careers. Many of them had spent 10 years practicing their swordsmanship for the sake of this conference. It wasn't just the disciples themselves. Their factions hoped to nominate an expert to climb up the ranks of the two depositories and courtyards and win glory for their factions. They wanted to use this chance to elevate Tianshan Kinzo's status. Although these people were loyal to Long Fei Yi, the allure of the Celestial Sword Conference was too great. First, no matter how strong Long Fei Yi's martial arts were, he was still old Kinzo's disciple. Old Kinzo wouldn't accept any more disciples, so the disciples of the various factions couldn't climb Celestial Mountain through Long Fei Yi to learn superior sword skills. They could only pass the Celestial Sword Conference and the two depositories and courtyards. Second, Long Fei Yi had no intention of fighting for the position of sect head, nor did he plan to stay on Celestial Mountain for long. Long Fei Yi wasn't a member of the martial arts world, so he'd have to return to court eventually. How long could Long Fei Yi protect them? Third, Long Fei Yi might be the sect head's disciple, but the sect head was growing less and less involved. Head Elder Zhangqiuzi was growing more and more powerful, so Long Fei Yi's words in Kinzo held less and less weight. People's hearts couldn't resist temptation. Moreover, Zhangqiuzi and the rest had long known that Long Fei Yi controlled many of the branch factions. They definitely used the Celestial Sword Conference to weaken Long Fei Yi's power. Han Yunqi's considerations were the same as Long Fei Yi's. Long Fei Yi understood people's hearts better than Han Yunqi, especially those of the martial arts world. He looked up into the clouds and said, Han Yunqi, there's another grand meeting before the Celestial Sword Conference that I'll be attending. Hearing his heavy tone, Han Yunqi felt a little uneasy. What grand meeting? On the 5th day of the 5th month, the Kinzo ranking tournament. Long Fei Yi said. All Celestial Mountain disciples are allowed to participate. They're responsible for their own life and death, and the top 5 will be ranked based on their martial arts skills. Han Yunqi knitted her brows. You mean, Master won't be participating? If we take first place in the Kinzo ranking tournament, the rest will be much easier, Long Fei Yi said. The rules of the Jianghu martial arts world were simple. Those with high martial arts skills were king. If he could take first place in the ranking tournament, then even the sword and scripture depositories wouldn't dare to cause trouble, to say nothing of the branch factions. Zhangqiuzi would then be alone and without help. He only had 2 goals for coming to Celestial Mountain this time. One was to bring Han Yunxi to see Master, the other was to destroy Zhang Qiuzi. The fastest way to kill Zhang Qiuzi was to participate in the ranking tournament. But if he wanted to take first place, he'd have to undo the seal on his body. With the three countries at war and the struggles of the imperial court, he couldn't stay on Celestial Mountain for too long. Chapter 7:15. After hearing about the ranking matches, Han Yunxi finally understood the dangers of Long Fei Ye's trip. But the most dangerous part wasn't the ranking matches, but the removal of the seal. Once Long Fei Ye's seal was removed, Zhang Qiuzi would be no match for him with his current martial arts skills and unshakable internal energy. East Qin's Lustbite seal gave Long Fei Yi its Lustbite energy, but it also gave Long Fei Yi plenty of restrictions. The biggest one was that once he removed the seal, he wouldn't be able to control the Lustbite energy, which would lead to qi deviation. Long Fei Yi was confident that his current mental strength was enough to control the Lustbite energy, but no one had ever used it before, so he had no idea what could happen. Thus, he still needed to be cautious. There was still more than a month until the 5th of May, so there was plenty of time. As long as his master could help him, there shouldn't be any problems. Thus, he had to stabilize his master's emotions and condition first. Duanmu Yao, who he'd never taken to heart, was now a big problem. Han Yunxi used to lament how great it would be if she knew martial arts. Now she was sighing instead. Long Fei Yi, how great would it be if you knew poisons? I'll teach you. Long Fei Yi had fought with Zhang Qiuzi at Lost Void Lake, but it wasn't a one-on-one fight. Long Fei Yi had her poison needles to support him, while Zhang Qiuzi had ambushed him first before protecting Duanmu Yao. The two of them hadn't exchanged more than a few blows before someone else ambushed them, giving Zhang Qiuzi the chance to flee. It was hard to estimate the distance between Long Fei Yi and Zhang Qiuzi. Long Fei Yi, it's impossible to teach him martial arts in such a short time. But you can learn poisons. With the help of poisons, Zhang Qiuzi won't be your match. Han Yunxi said excitedly. Long Fei Yi raised his eyebrows and looked at her. He didn't say anything but just smiled. Han Yunxi quickly realized how stupid she'd been. Poison arts weren't accepted by the mainstream of Cloud Realm, especially Medical City, which strongly rejected them. Tianshan Kenzo was the leader of the martial arts world, the representative of justice in the martial arts world. If Long Fei Yi used poison in the ranking tournament, the consequences would be unimaginable. The ranking battles only compete in sword arts. Long Fei Yi rubbed her bangs. As he rubbed, he unconsciously pulled her into his embrace. He smiled dotingly. Silly girl, you've become stupid again. When this woman was anxious, she would turn stupid. Han Yunxi was indeed anxious. One had to know that the ranking tournament's rule was one's own life and death. How could she not be anxious when it came to matters of life and death? She hated herself for not being able to help him at the critical moment. Long Fei Yi had only brought Han Yunxi to Celestial Mountain, so his master could see her. He didn't need her help at all. Don't worry, it'll be fine. Long Fei Yi comforted her. How could Han Yunxi set her mind at ease? She thought for a while before saying, Long Fei Yi, the only one who can help you is old Kinzo. He better not act up at the critical moment. Long Fei Yi was about to speak when Han Yunxi added hastily, Duanmu Yao should be at the peak of Celestial Mountain right now, right? Old Kinzo dotes on her so much. Long Fei Yi, Duanmu Yao's in danger. She muttered to herself, but quickly denied her own words. That's not right. Old Kinzo's illness is the key. Long Fei Yi, this is the biggest variable. Long Fei Yi couldn't help but laugh when he saw how nervous she was. He realized that this woman was really smart. Even though she didn't know about the love-devouring seal, she still grasped the crux of the matter. That's right, Long Fei Yi admitted. Madness. Han Yunxi muttered to herself again. If only Gu Beiwei could come along? Sigh, it might not be of any use even if he came. Old Kinzo might not accept treatment either. She pondered as she spoke. Some illnesses that can't be cured for a long time aren't actually incurable. It's just that the patient doesn't want to be cured. It's a form of self-punishment. This was the first time Long Fei Yi had heard of such a theory. Even though it was absurd, it made sense when he thought about it carefully. Mental illness, in the end, was a form of self-punishment. Long Fei allowed Han Yunqi to ramble on as he listened intently. This topic was supposed to be a heavy one, but his lips curved into a faint smile the entire time. He never knew that Han Yunqi could have such an adorable side. He liked it when this woman was stupid. Han Yunqi and Long Fei had already reached here without hearing any rumors about Duanmu Yao's injuries. Judging from Granny Yu's reaction, she probably didn't know either. Most likely, Song Qiuzi and Duanmu Yao hadn't used the incident to stir up trouble. Still, Duanmu Yao's kidnapping of Grand Concubine Yi was wrong no matter what. They weren't stupid enough to ruin their own reputation. Long Fei you wouldn't let the matter rest so easily. So Han Yunqi was curious to see how Duanmu Yao and Song Qiuzi would deal with the situation. Soon enough, they reached the end of the long suspension bridge. By now, the clouds covering Celestial Mountain had dispersed. Han Yunqi stood at the end of the bridge as the clouds dispersed to reveal Celestial Mountain's true features. She couldn't help but halt her steps. She'd seen her share of wonders on the way here, but none of them were as magnificent and gorgeous as this one. Han Yunqi assumed that the fifth peak of Celestial Mountain would be a towering mountain, so high that she couldn't see its peak. She never expected it to be a mountain with 5 or 6 fingers. On top of the mountain were 6 peaks of different heights. 5 of them looked like Buddha's fingers as they rose high into the air. Clouds swirled around them as if they were suspended in midair. All 5 of them were connected by suspension bridges. In the middle of the 5 peaks was a very low peak with a grand palace at its peak. In front of the palace was a wide balcony that served as a martial arts arena. The surrounding 5 peaks all had suspension bridges that led to this palace. Han Yunqi and Long Fei stood on top of a cliff with a suspension bridge that led to the middle peak. Long Fei pointed at the highest peak and said, "That's the peak of Celestial Mountain. Master cultivates there and rarely comes down." Han Yunqi looked over and only felt that it wasn't cold at all. That was the highest point on Celestial Mountain, where one could overlook the entire mountain range. That's Lockhart Courtyard. Only Song Qiuzi's disciples and those who passed the Celestial Sword Conference can cultivate there. Lockhart Courtyard has another cultivation area in the valley of the second peak for ordinary disciples to cultivate their inner arts. Long Fei pointed at each peak as he introduced them to Han Yunqi in detail. That's the Sword Depository. Next to it is the Scripture Depository. The Sword Depository houses treasured swords, while the Scripture Depository houses all of Tianshan Kinzo's sword manuals. All of them? Han Yunqi expressed her doubts. Long Fei was certain. Everything. All of them. As the saying goes, having no moves is better than having them. When one's swordsmanship reaches a certain level, the manuals aren't important anymore. What's important is internal energy. Han Yunqi understood. So the Scripture Depository is the weakest? Smart. Long Fei nodded. For experts, swords aren't as important as manuals. Song Qiuzi is in charge of Lockhart Courtyard. Han Yunqi muttered to herself. His internal energy, extremely high. Long Fei muttered. And the old man's a wily old fox who hides his skills well. While the two of them were chatting, they saw a few old men emerge from the opposite building. They seemed to be heading their way. Let's go to the peak. Long Fei clearly didn't want to run into them. Han Yunqi grew nervous. Were they about to meet the old men of Tianshan? Unexpectedly, a familiar voice called out to them. Fei, you're already here. Why aren't you greeting your martial uncles? What? Is your wife afraid of meeting her in-laws? The speaker was none other than Song Qiuzi. Soon enough, he flew over the bridge and landed in front of Long Fei's group. The 3 old men behind him followed suit. Han Yunqi recognized Granny Yu at a glance. She knew the other 2 had to be the elders of the Sword and Scripture Depositories. Song Qiuzi and Long Fei had fought a life-and-death battle, but the old man acted as if nothing had happened. He even asked after Long Fei's well-being. Han Yunqi truly admired the old man. Fei, hurry up and introduce them to your masters. You've had a concubine for so many years, but you've never invited your martial uncles to your wedding banquet. Old man's holding a banquet tonight, so he'll definitely punish you well. Song Qiuzi chuckled. Long Fei said, Martial Uncle Song, eminent people often forget things. Forget things? Old man remembers clearly that he's never attended your wedding banquet. Fei, you're acting shamelessly. Song Chiozi said seriously. Your lordship is talking about Grand Concubine Yi's kidnapping. Long Fei Yi said coldly. He had no interest in playing dumb with Song Chiozi. The other three elders were stunned by his words as they exchanged glances. Although Long Fei Yi hadn't made things clear, they were smart enough to know that Song Chiozi had something to do with it. Martial Uncle Song, you colluded with Duanmu Yao to kidnap my Mu Fei and use her life to force me to hand over the profound frost sword. That happened last month. You haven't forgotten, have you? Long Fei Yi asked. The second and third elders of the sword and scripture depositories exchanged glances without speaking, but Granny Yu of the Abstinence Hall broke into a cold laugh. Aya, what day is it today? Fei, why are you cracking such a big joke? Granny Yu understood Long Fei Yi well enough to know that he wasn't the type to joke around. Granny Yu believed his words were true, so she was mocking Long Fei Yi. Song Chiozi never expected Long Fei Yi to be so direct. His face alternated between green and white. Fei, since you've said it, I won't hide it from everyone. It really was your junior sister's fault this time. Old man wasn't helping her, but Old man wanted to stop her. Unfortunately, he couldn't. Song Chiozi sighed as he turned to face the peak of Celestial Mountain. Old man has let the sect leader down. Before the sect leader went into closed-door cultivation, he left all matters of the sect to Old man to manage. Old man managed Celestial Mountain perfectly. How could he have neglected you two? He glanced at Han Yunshi before continuing his act. You two have always been close since you were young. How could you fall out with Yao Yao as soon as you took in a concubine? No matter how many wrongs she's committed, she's still your little junior sister. Fei, how could you be so cruel? You hurt her dantian and crippled her martial arts. How could you face your master? All of the elders looked towards Han Yunshi at his words, including Granny Yu. Chapter 7:16. Han Yunshi was so disgusted by Song Chiozi's words that she wanted to throw up. This old thing not only shirked all responsibility for his actions, but tactfully shifted the blame onto her as well. He made it seem like Long Fei Yi had crippled Duanmu Yao because of her. Even if it really was because of her, Long Fei Yi had crippled Duanmu Yao. That was only right and proper. Seeing the strange looks from the other three elders, Han Yunshi didn't plan to hold back any longer. There was something she had to make clear today. Cold, she said. Elder Tsong, your words aren't right. What do you mean His Highness got into a fight with Duanmu Yao as soon as he got a consort? It was clearly this Wang Fei who got to know His Highness Duke of Qin first. We've always been on good terms, so why did he get into so much trouble after coming to Celestial Mountain with a junior sister? Song Chiozi couldn't believe it. The other three elders were at a loss as well. They had no idea what Han Yunshi was talking about. Song Chiozi was still very polite, like a benevolent and magnanimous elder. He smiled helplessly and explained, there are some things you don't know yet, right? Fei went to Celestial Mountain to learn martial arts when he was 4 years old. Yao Yao was still in his arms back then. Everyone in Cloud Realm Continent knows that they've known each other since they were young. Han Yunshi didn't want to be polite with Song Chiozi, but she didn't even want to pretend. There was no time like the present. Since Long Fei had exposed Grand Concubine Yi's affairs in front of everyone, she didn't mind blowing things up until everyone knew. Everyone in Celestial Mountain would see what kind of people Song Chiozi and Duanmu Yao were. She snorted disdainfully. I never expected Elder Tsong to be so inexperienced despite his age. Everyone in Cloud Realm Continent knows about this Wang Fei and His Highness's marriage, so how come Elder Tsong doesn't know? She glanced at Long Fei Yi before adding, this Wang Fei was betrothed to His Highness when I was still in my mother's womb. Since then, this Wang Fei has been His Highness Duke of Qin's woman. If we're talking about who came first, who came earlier than this Wang Fei? Everyone was stunned by her words except for Long Fei Yi. Because he was smiling, the corners of his mouth silently curled into a shallow arc. It was obvious that he was in a good mood. If Han Yunshi hadn't mentioned it, he wouldn't have realized it. Indeed, this woman belonged to him from the moment she was born. Song Chiozi's mouth twitched as his beard trembled. He was furious. This stinky girl actually scolded him in front of everyone as inexperienced and even said such a fallacious argument. He was the head elder of Celestial Mountain Sword Sect, second only to one person and above tens of thousands. No one dared to disrespect him. Even someone as proud as Long Fei had to treat him with courtesy on the surface. Today, he was ridiculed by Han Yunqi. Where was his face? That's absurd. Han Yunqi, how did you marry Qin Wangfei in the first place? How did you get off the bridal sedan chair and enter the door on your own? Have you forgotten? Song Qiuzi huffed, but as soon as he finished speaking, he regretted it. With his status, he shouldn't criticize these things, especially in front of the other three elders. Han Yunqi must have angered him senseless. See here. Han Yunqi laughed disdainfully. Elder Song, what does my marriage with His Highness Duke of Qin have to do with you? I understand that the Duke of Qin is busy with work, but what's wrong with me marrying in on my own? What does that have to do with you? You're a man, yet you're arguing with a woman like me over such things. Do you have any shame? You. Song Qiuzi raged. You have no respect for your elders. He can't win in words, so he's using his age to pressure me? Han Yunqi hated people who took advantage of their seniority the most. She arched a brow at Song Qiuzi and laughed coldly. Elder Song, who are you to me? You think you're infallible. They're neither relatives nor friends. He's only older than me, but he wants to be my senior? His character isn't worthy? Song Qiuzi was thoroughly enraged. He raised his hand to slap her, but Long Fei immediately grabbed his wrist and stopped him. He'd leave the venomous tongue to Han Yunqi, but he'd keep a close eye on her when it came to fighting. He'd always loathed people talking about his and Han Yunqi's marriage. In the past, he hated it even more now. He'd always remembered what he owed Han Yunqi. Song Qiuzi was surprised. He immediately circulated his internal energy, but Long Fei didn't pale in comparison. Their swords were drawn, and the atmosphere grew tense. Long Fei, you dare to raise your hand against old man? Song Qiuzi asked coldly. He didn't want to fight Long Fei for real, because things would get out of hand. Han Yunqi wasn't a disciple of the Celestial Mountain Sword Sect, so he couldn't do anything to her. But when it came to Long Fei, his status as martial uncle and elder was enough to suppress him. The last two times they'd fought outside Celestial Mountain were in private. Now they were standing on the mountain in front of the other elders. Fei, don't be rude. Talk things out. Granny, you scolded. Respecting one's teachers was the #1 rule of Celestial Mountain. Your lordship is doing this for Martial Uncle Tsong's own good. Otherwise, it would be too late for Martial Uncle Tsong to regret it. Long Fei said, you hit a woman just because you can't beat her in a few words. If news of this gets out, what face will Martial Uncle Tsong have left? What will happen to Tianshan Kinzo's dignity? Moreover, she's the mistress of the South Central Region's Commander-in-Chief's estate. If Martial Uncle Tsong hurts a hair on her head, your lordship won't make a fuss, but the Commander-in-Chief's estate won't let it go so easily. Is Lockhart Courtyard trying to provoke Tianshan Kinzo into trouble with the Imperial Court? Long Fei's last words were harsh, before he viciously flung Song Qiuzi's hand away. As soon as he finished speaking, the entire place fell silent. Long Fei was still polite to Song Qiuzi, but he was worse than Han Yunqi. Han Yunqi's venomous tongue had at most attracted the attention of the surrounding disciples and humiliated Song Qiuzi. But Long Fei's words were a naked warning. He couldn't violate the sect's rules, but allowed Han Yunqi's venomous tongue. He wouldn't openly oppose Lockhart Courtyard, but used Han Yunqi to declare war on them. He was clearly the boss behind the scenes, but he'd kindly warned Martial Uncle Tsong. The elders exchanged glances before realizing that Long Fei had come prepared. Song Qiuzi was at a loss for words. He couldn't argue, but he couldn't ignore either. He'd always been a patient man. Even when faced with something as big as the heavens, he could deal with it calmly. How had a little girl like Han Yunqi managed to goad him into action with just a few words? Song Qiuzi was filled with regret when he saw the crowd of disciples around them. Still, he managed to calm down. He didn't want this matter to continue to blow up. If it did, his and Duanmu Yao's plans would be completely disrupted. The sect master was still in seclusion. If they talked about this matter too early, it would only bring harm to them. Forget it. Forget it. The old man can't care about you young people fighting over a woman's affection, nor do I care. Wait until your master comes out, then let him do it, Song Qiuzi said as he prepared to leave. Long Fei Yi stepped forward and blocked Tong Qiuzi's path with his body. Cold, Han Yunqi said, "This isn't about fighting over a woman's affection, but a matter of life and death. Elder Song, you colluded with Duanmu Yao to kidnap Grand Concubine Yi. Today, let's make things clear in front of the elders and disciples of the two depositories and courtyards. Otherwise, they'll guess too much and have negative effects." Han Yunqi, you can eat carelessly, but you can't speak carelessly. The old man already said that Duanmu Yao was the only one who kidnapped Grand Concubine Yi. The old man couldn't stop her. Yao Yao was just being willful for a moment, but she didn't really do anything to Grand Concubine Yi. The old man never expected you husband and wife to be so cruel. Crippling her martial arts was one thing, but taking her life as well. If the old man hadn't arrived in time, the sect leader would never have seen his beloved disciple again. Song Qiuzi's words were filled with righteous indignation. The three elders on the side didn't understand the situation and didn't dare to speak up. Lady Long Yu had been killed in the City of Daughters, and Long Fei Yi, gifting the city to Han Yunqi. They had long heard of this, but never expected Duanmu Yao and Song Qiuzi to be involved. It looked like Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqi had come to Celestial Mountain for the sake of revenge. Granny Yu had long disliked Song Qiuzi, but couldn't find any evidence of him breaking sect rules or accepting bribes. If Long Fei Yi could produce solid proof this time, then her abstinence courtyard would definitely investigate Song Qiuzi's crimes even if she didn't favor him. The two elders of the sword and scripture depositories had relied on Song Qiuzi for years, but they too had been sullen. If Long Fei Yi could topple Song Qiuzi, they were more than willing to help. But they wouldn't act rashly unless they were absolutely certain. If Long Fei Yi couldn't topple Song Qiuzi, then their sword and scripture depositories would suffer along with him. The sect leader was still in closed-door cultivation, while Duanmu Yao hadn't shown up since her return. They could only wait and see how things would develop. Then may I ask how Elder Tsang knew Duanmu Yao wanted to kidnap Grand Concubine Yi? And when did you find out? Han Yunqi asked patiently. More and more disciples gathered around them. Song Qiuzi knew he couldn't avoid today's events. In any case, Duanmu Yao was about to confess her crimes, so all he had to do now was clear himself of suspicion. He had long prepared an excuse to face the sect leader, but now he was using it against Han Yunqi. Old man never knew about this until he ran into Yao Yao's servant girl that day. That's how he found out Yao Yao had kidnapped Grand Concubine Yi and wanted to threaten Fei into handing over the profound frost sword. Old man immediately went to find Yao Yao to stop her, but he couldn't stop her. As soon as old man wasn't paying attention, the girl ran away. Old man had to torture the servant girl before he found out Yao Yao had gone to Lost Void Lake. Song Qiuzi shook his head as he spoke, utterly helpless. It's a pity that by the time old man arrived at Lost Void Lake, Yao Yao had already been crippled by Fei. If old man had been any later, Yao Yao would have lost her life. Fei, she's still your junior sister. How could you be so heartless? Han Yunqi knitted her brows at Tong Qiuzi. She never thought he'd be so shameless. The Grand Kenzo head elder was full of lies and fabricating nonsense. The more power one had, the better they were at acting. Since he mentioned the servant girl, he must have made thorough preparations. That servant girl was his witness. Besides the people from the City of Daughters, there were only the three of them at the scene. Many of their witnesses had died, but Long Fei Yi had long sent men to interrogate the few who were still alive. But they were stubborn and would rather die than testify. So was Song Qiuzi really supposed to make up stories like this? Was he really going to get rid of his crimes with just a few words? Seeing Han Yunqi's expression, Song Qiuzi's eyes flickered with disdain. If you don't believe old man, then it's useless for him to say anything more to old man Yao Yao and that servant girl were kneeling at the peak of Celestial Mountain, waiting for the sect leader to emerge from closed-door cultivation. Yao Yao was in the wrong here, But Fei's crimes weren't small either. Once your master emerges, old man won't favor either of you. Song Chiozi was simply too shameless. Han Yunshi couldn't accept it. She furrowed her brows as she recalled every detail of Lost Void Lake. She refused to believe that perfect lies existed in this world. There had to be a flaw in Song Chiozi's lies. There had to be. Chapter 717. As soon as he finished speaking, Song Chiozi prepared to leave, but Long Fei Yi stopped him. Han Yunshi wasn't the only one who couldn't accept it. He couldn't swallow his anger either. Han Yunshi was still trying her best to recall the details when Long Fei Yi spoke up cold. Martial Uncle Song, since Duanmu Yao and that servant girl are both at the peak, why don't we call them down and ask them in front of the three martial uncles? What, Fei? You don't believe your martial uncle's words. Song Chiozi laughed coldly. He'd prepared his excuse long ago, along with the servant girl. He wasn't afraid that Long Fei Yi would pursue the matter. There were only a few witnesses at Lost Void Lake. The city of Daughters Long clan was ruined, so they'd never testify for Long Fei Yi. Since Master's in closed-door cultivation, let's not disturb him. Today, Auntie Yu, second martial uncle, and third martial uncle are all here. So why don't we call all the witnesses down and ask them clearly? If Martial Uncle Tsong really isn't an accomplice, then we'll drop the matter. Your lordship won't pursue the matter. Long Fei Ye's tone was polite, but his words weren't. Song Chiozi was full of confidence. Now that things had gotten so big, he really did need to call all the witnesses down to clear his name. Otherwise, there'd be too many disciples here to spread rumors tomorrow. He'd use this chance to clear himself of all suspicions. When Long Fei Yi and Duanmu Yao started arguing, he'd have more right to speak up. He. Old man wants the two of them to come down and testify for the old man. But you know Yao Yao's temper as well. It's hard to say whether she'll come down or not. Why don't you call them down yourself as her senior brother? Under Song Chiozi's tyrannical abuse, Duanmu Yao had long obeyed his orders. Song Chiozi was only putting on a more convincing act. With so many disciples from the two depositories and courtyards gathered around, how could Duanmu Yao not know? She had been paying attention to the situation here from afar. A few meddlesome junior sisters from Lockhart Courtyard had sent her a lot of messages. Han Yunshi grew doubtful. Long Fei Ye's attitude was so unyielding that he must have found a flaw in Song Chiozi's plans. Although she couldn't figure out what it was, she trusted that Long Fei Yi wouldn't fight an uncertain battle. She didn't make a sound and waited quietly. Long Fei Yi naturally wouldn't go find Duanmu Yao and the maid himself. He'd sent someone to do it. The man hadn't even reached the peak when Duanmu Yao flew over with a servant girl. Duanmu Yao knew the situation here like the back of her hand, so she couldn't wait to rush over as soon as Song Chiozi gave the word. The master and servant, one in white and the other in green, flew down from the top of Mount Tianshan. They were like fairies descending to the mortal world. Everyone looked up and many men were stunned. Duanmu Yao was a famous beauty. She was not only beautiful, but beautiful beyond the reach of mortals. Her features were like Mount Tianshan, and her aura was otherworldly. Such a woman was the most attractive to men in the mortal world. Even the disciples of Mount Tianshan found it difficult to catch a glimpse of Duanmu Yao. Everyone knew that Duanmu Yao had been back for a long time, but they hadn't seen her in person yet. Today, they'd finally see her. However, the reality soon disappointed these expectant men. Duanmu Yao was wearing a mask, a silver-white mask that covered her face completely. Only her eyes and mouth were visible. As soon as she landed, she didn't look at Long Fei Yi, but Han Yunshi. Her eyes were filled with hatred that seeped into her bones. Because of Han Yunshi's one night like a year, her face was covered in wrinkles and age spots. She was so ugly that she didn't even dare to look at herself in a mirror. From now on, she'd have to wear a mask in public. Han Yunshi was magnanimous and didn't shy away from Duanmu Yao's hatred. If you don't offend me, I won't offend you. If you offend me, I'll dig up the weeds by the roots. Han Yunshi only hated herself for being too slow with her poison needles. She couldn't kill Duanmu Yao and had to face so much trouble at Mount Tianshan. Hidden in the crowd, Song Chioying glanced between Han Yunshi and Han Yunshi. Her keen senses told her that Duanmu Yao's mask must have something to do with her. Duanmu Yao was Mount Tianshan's #1 beauty, while she was its ugliest girl. Duanmu Yao had been Long Fei Ye's junior sister since she was young, but Song Qiuying was fated to be Long Fei Ye's enemy. Song Qiuying had never liked Duanmu Yao, so she dearly wanted to peel off her mask and see for herself. Of course, her father was present, so she didn't dare to act rashly. Song Qiuzi put on an act and explained everything to Duanmu Yao before saying earnestly, Yao Yao, Martial Uncle can't interfere with the matters between you and your senior brother. Once your master comes out of closed-door cultivation, you two can deal with it yourselves. Now that your senior brother is suspecting Martial Uncle, you have to testify for Martial Uncle. Duanmu Yao looked towards Long Fei Yi and felt like her heart was being cut by a knife. Grievances, unwillingness, regret, despair, bitterness, and pain flooded her heart as her eyes grew wet. Unfortunately, Long Fei Yi was a cold, emotionless man. Aside from Han Yunqi, he looked at everyone else with cold eyes. You want to be my witness? He asked icily. Yes. Duanmu Yao replied without hesitation. She'd already ruined herself, so she didn't mind destroying this man in front of her. She wanted to destroy both jade and common stone. Long Fei Yi, if you don't love me, then hate me. Remember me forever, and hate me forever. Martial Uncle Song wasn't my accomplice. I did it all by myself. I bribed Lady Longyu to kidnap Grand Concubine Yi. Martial Uncle Song tried to persuade me, but I didn't listen. Duanmu Yao's lips curved into a self-mocking smile. Even now, I don't regret it. I didn't kidnap Grand Concubine Yi because I wanted Senior Brother's profound frost sword. I couldn't keep it under control, so I just wanted to lure Senior Brother out so he could treat my injuries. But I never expected Senior Brother to be so vicious and merciless. He crippled my martial arts and even wanted to kill me. If Martial Uncle Song hadn't arrived in time, my little life would have been over. Princess Yao really didn't have any intentions of hurting Grand Concubine Yi. Princess Yao suffered severe internal injuries and asked His Highness Duke of Qin for help over and over again. His Highness Duke of Qin not only ignored their ties as fellow disciples and didn't lend a helping hand, but spoke ill of her each time. Princess Yao only hired assassins on impulse to kidnap Grand Concubine Yi. Although Princess Yao was in the wrong first, but the blue-robed servant girl was well-trained. As she spoke, she began to cry. But I never expected His Highness Duke of Qin to be so cruel. Fortunately, Elder Tsang followed to find the princess. Otherwise, this servant would never have seen the princess again. Jackals of the same lair. Han Yunqi cursed in her heart. Did you see your lordship hurt her with your own eyes? Long Fei Ye's icy gaze landed on the blue-robed servant girl, who gave a start before hastily dodging away. Her legs grew weak as she stammered, No, this servant. No, it was Elder Tsang who rescued the princess. This servant saw it. You were the one who told Martial Uncle Tsang that Duanmu Yao went to Lost Void Lake? That's why he chased after her. Long Fei Yi asked icily. Yes. The servant girl grit her teeth and mustered her courage. Martial Uncle Tsang chased her all the way to Lost Void Lake and happened to see your lordship about to kill you? Long Fei Yi looked towards Duanmu Yao again. Yes. Compared to the blue-robed servant girl, Duanmu Yao was much more confident. Long Fei Yi looked towards Song Qiuzi next. Martial Uncle Tsang couldn't stop Duanmu Yao, so he interrogated the servant girl before chasing her to Lost Void Lake. Long Fei Ye's repeated questions made Song Qiuzi uneasy, but he'd thought over his words carefully and didn't have any flaws. After some hesitation, he said with certainty, Yes. He, Duanmu Yao, and the servant girl all agreed. Unless they found another witness, Long Fei Yi wouldn't be able to do anything to him. Fei, do you believe me now? Song Qiuzi asked seriously. But Long Fei only replied icily, Don't believe me. Things have already gotten to this point. Old man has done everything he could. It's up to you to believe me or not. Old man has a clear conscience. Song Qiuzi grew stern. Even if you don't believe me, old man doesn't regret saving. Before he could finish, Long Fei Yi cut in cold. Then may I ask why Martial Uncle wasn't poisoned? Poisoned? Song Chiozi gave a start. He was a little lost, but seemed to remember something. Meanwhile, Han Yunxi immediately understood Long Fei Ye's meaning. She got it. Why didn't she think of that? Poison was the biggest flaw in this case. Song Chiozi knitted his brows in confusion, but Han Yunxi suddenly activated Pear Blossom Teardrop Rain and shot him with a poison needle. Song Chiozi didn't have time to retort until he was struck. Han Yunxi, you've got guts. As soon as he spoke, his stomach began to hurt. Han Yunxi, you actually dared to poison old man. Someone come. Song Chiozi clutched his stomach and tried to hold on, but poison was poison. He couldn't hold on and soon collapsed to the ground. Alarmed, all of the Lockhart courtyard disciples surrounded him. Song Chioying rushed forward to support Tong Chiozi. Father, what's wrong? Han Yunxi, you've got guts. You dared to commit murder on Celestial Mountain. Rebellion. Rebellion. Someone come. Hurry and arrest old man. Second and third elder were furious, while Granny Yu was stunned. Fei, what do you mean by this? Long Fei Yi pulled Han Yunxi behind him to protect her. Yunxi only wants to prove the truth, he said coldly. Everyone, please calm down. By now, Song Chiozi had realized the flaw in his lie. Lady Long Yu's assassins had been poisoned in the maze, making it impossible for them to ambush Long Fei Yi and the rest. Right now, he was suffering from the same poison as those female assassins. He couldn't give Han Yunxi and Long Fei Yi a chance to tell the truth. Otherwise, he and Duanmu Yao would never be able to explain themselves. Song Chiozi was practically roaring. Someone come. Arrest them. Hurry. In a flash, all of the Lockhart courtyard disciples unsheathed their swords and pointed them at Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi. Senior brother, let Fei explain himself first. There's no rush. Granny Yu said, but Song Chiozi ignored her. Neither the Lockhart courtyard disciples paid her any attention. Even Song Chioying sensed something off from her father's tone. She unsheathed her sword and pointed it at Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi. Han Yunxi, if you dare to hurt my father, I'll fight you to the death. Granny Yu couldn't stop them, so second and third elder had long retreated. With swords drawn and bows bent, a fight was about to break out. Long Fei Yi was about to unsheath his sword when Han Yunxi suddenly stopped him. Her voice was cold. Song Chiozi, have your men withdraw immediately. Otherwise, this Wang Fei guarantees that no one will be able to treat your poison. Try me if you don't believe me. Song Chiozi gave a start. At this moment, a low, stern voice spoke up from behind Han Yunxi and Long Fei Yi. Where did this wild girl come from? How dare she behave so atrociously at this esteemed one's feet? Chapter 718. Not only was this voice unfamiliar to Han Yunxi, but many of the disciples from the two depositories and courtyards as well. Almost everyone turned to look, including Long Fei Yi. A white figure slowly descended from Celestial Mountain's peak, his white robes fluttering in the wind as his white hair swayed in the wind. His white beard fluttered in the wind, making him look elegant and refined, dignified and holy. Han Yunxi couldn't help but feel a sense of reverence as she watched. Is there really an old immortal living on Celestial Mountain? Han Yunxi muttered to herself. Soon enough, the white-robed old man landed on the ground. He looked to be in his early 60s, with a thin figure and a tall stature. Despite his age, he didn't look old at all. He was dressed in spacious, wide-sleeved robes without any decorations. It was so simple that it seemed extraordinary. Half his hair was tied up in a bun with a white jade hairpin. His silvery hair reached his waist, neatly combed and smooth. Although his face was old, wrinkles could be seen, and his white beard was long, but his face still made people feel that he was handsome. When he was young, he must have been an incomparably handsome man. His face was taut and solemn as he scrutinized Han Yunxi with cold eyes. This was none other than the head of Tianshan Kinzo, Long Fei Ye's master, Old Man Qinshinli. The surrounding disciples all knelt to pay their respects, while the elders did the same. Even Song Chiozi was no exception. Greetings to honored master. Greetings to senior brother. Congratulations on successfully emerging from closed-door cultivation. Many of the disciples from the two depositories and courtyards had been on Celestial Mountain for years now, but none of them had seen the sect head's true face. Everyone was trembling with fear as they knelt on the ground. After all, this old man was the supreme leader of the martial arts circles. No one was a match for him. Long Fei bowed respectfully as well. Master. Although Han Yunqi was shocked by old Kinzo, she regained her senses and bowed to Long Fei. Han Yunqi greets Senior Kinzo. Kinzo's cold eyes examined Han Yunqi before resting on Long Fei. He was about to speak when Song Chiozi cried out, "Senior brother, you have to uphold justice for your junior brother. This girl actually dared to commit murder on Tianshan Mountain and poison me." Fei was so infatuated with her that he couldn't tell right from wrong and almost got into a fight with the disciples. Duanmu Yao had just stood up when she immediately plopped back down on her knees and burst into tears. "Master, you've finally come out of seclusion." Sob. Yao Yao has been wronged. Yao Yao doesn't want to live anymore. The Kinzo old man finally noticed that Duanmu Yao was also there. He didn't recognize her because she was wearing a mask. He frowned and looked at her. "What happened to your face?" Duanmu Yao sobbed. "Yao Yao doesn't want to live anymore. I don't want to live anymore." Kinzo's old man strode over and tried to remove her mask, but Duanmu Yao held it in place. "Master, if you take off this mask today, Yao Yao will jump off the peak of Tianshan Mountain right now. You'll never see Yao Yao again." A threat? Han Yunqi felt a little uneasy as she watched. She knew that the sword sect master doted on Duanmu Yao, but she never thought it was to this extent. Duanmu Yao even dared to threaten him in front of everyone. Kinzo's old man didn't care about Duanmu Yao's lack of respect. He rose to his feet and said to the servant girl, "What's the use of crying and sobbing? Hurry and take her back so we can keep an eye on her." Seeing this, Han Yunqi knew that old Kinzo was trying to turn a big problem into a small one. As the head of Kinzo's sect, turning a big problem into a small one was the wisest choice. After all, this matter involved the first elder and his two disciples. No matter who was right and who was wrong, arguing in front of everyone was not only beneath his dignity, but also had a negative impact on his reputation. Third, if the matter really got out of hand, he would have a hard time turning a blind eye to it. The servant girl quickly helped Duanmu Yao up. Duanmu Yao was smart enough not to refuse. Han Yunqi didn't want her to leave, nor did she want to turn a big problem into a small one. However, she wasn't an impulsive person. She didn't understand old Kinzo's temper at all. She could only remain silent and let Long Fei handle the situation. Although she wasn't trying to curry favor with old Kinzo, she couldn't afford to offend him either. Long Fei didn't say anything. Soon, the servant girl helped Duanmu Yao back to the top of Tianshan Mountain. Kinzo's old man frowned again. It was obvious that Duanmu Yao had lost all her martial arts. Otherwise, why would she need a servant girl to help her up the mountain? Old Kinzo's eyes flashed with anger, but he kept his composure. Song Chiozi hadn't taken his eyes off old Kinzo this entire time. As soon as Duanmu Yao left, he shot Song Chioying a look. If he didn't cry out in pain, Song Chiozi would do it for him. "Master, I beg you to save my father. Han Yunqi poisoned my father." "Master, my father's in so much pain that he can't speak. I beg you to save him. Besides you, no one can control that demoness. Even senior brother Fei has been bewitched by her, and let her do as she pleases." Han Yunqi assumed that old Kinzo would demand that she hand over the antidote immediately, but Kinzo ignored her and didn't mention a word about the antidote. He looked at Han Yunqi and asked coldly, "Han Yunqi is you?" "Exactly," Han Yunqi admitted openly. "Ambushing an elder on Celestial Mountain? Do you know the worst punishment for that?" Old Kinzo asked. "I didn't do anything violent. I only wanted to prove." Before Han Yunqi could finish, old Kinzo cut her off. "A sneak attack is a sneak attack. There's no need to explain." Long Fei immediately tried to explain himself. "Master, I told her to use the poison. If you want to punish someone, punish this disciple. This disciple is willing to accept the punishment." Han Yunqi tugged at Long Fei's sleeve to express her dissatisfaction. They clearly didn't do anything wrong. They hadn't even figured out the truth behind Grand Concubine Yi's kidnapping. So why should they be punished? She couldn't accept it. Long Fei Yi patted her hand to tell her to calm down. Han Yunqi's heart was stifled, but she still listened to Long Fei Yi. Junior sister, according to the sect rules, how should they be punished? Old Kinzo asked. A complicated look flitted past Granny Yu's eyes as she hesitated. According to the sect rules, a light punishment would be 3 years of reflection in the abstinence hall. A heavy punishment would be expulsion from Tianshan Kinzo. Han Yunqi sucked in a cold breath. If they punished Long Fei Yi like this today, they might as well fight to the death. She was truly disappointed in old Kinzo. This old man was too unreasonable. Since this is your first offense and you didn't do it on purpose, I'll punish you with a month of reflection, old Kinzo said as he waved a hand to dismiss the crowd. Song Chiozi rejoiced. Although he'd been poisoned, at least the matter with Grand Concubine Yi had stopped for now. Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqi couldn't expose his lies, so he'd escape disaster. He endured the pain in his stomach and waited. No matter what, his senior brother would help him get the antidote. As the crowd dispersed, Long Fei Yi's eyes were hooded. It was unclear what he was thinking, but he didn't speak. Han Yunqi couldn't take it anymore. A month of reflection would delay Long Fei Yi's ascent to Celestial Mountain. Taking a step back, even if there was no delay, what right did they have to suffer? It was too sullen. They could clearly prove that Song Chiozi was lying and that he and Duanmu Yao were in cahoots to kidnap Grand Concubine Yi. She'd poisoned Song Chiozi to prove that he couldn't cure the poison. But if he couldn't cure the poison, how did he get lost in the first place? After all, she'd poisoned Long Fei Yi after entering the maze. When Lady Long Yu escaped with Long Shuangshuang and Song Chiozi rescued Duanmu Yao, she'd wanted to use poison to trap them, but a mysterious expert cured the poison. Otherwise, neither Lady Long Yu nor Song Chiozi would have escaped. It was obvious that Song Chiozi didn't understand poisons and didn't know someone had cured him of the poison. That was why he'd made such a mistake. His lies were full of holes. It was obvious that he and Duanmu Yao had hidden by the lakeside to avoid being poisoned. Everything he'd said just then, Duanmu Yao, and that servant girl's testimony were all lies. Han Yunqi didn't understand. Why didn't Long Fei Yi tell the truth? As long as he did, her poisoning would be excusable and Song Chiozi's reputation would be ruined. Moreover, he'd be severely punished by the abstinence courtyard. Seeing that Long Fei Yi still didn't understand, Han Yunqi said coldly, I'll take responsibility for my own actions. If you want to punish someone, punish me. I was the one who poisoned him. Even the Duke of Qin has no antidote. Senior Kinzo, it's no use punishing him. Everyone had already walked far away, but they still turned back to look. But Kinzo ignored Han Yunqi and said to Granny Yu, come to my place tonight to pick him up. He hasn't been back for a long time, so allow this Grandmaster to have a good chat with him. Hearing this, everyone knew that this was the end of the matter. Grand Concubine Yi's matter was probably just as Elder Tsong had said. It was nothing more than a grudge between Long Fei Yi and Duanmu Yao. It wasn't as serious as they thought. Once Elder Tsong's poison was cured and Long Fei Yi's 3-month sentence was up, Kinzo would deal with the matter himself. A good show had come to an abrupt end because Kinzo came out of closed-door cultivation early. It had to be said that those who were rejoicing in his misfortune were unhappy, especially second and third elder. Long Fei Yi. Han Yunqi panicked. She tugged at his hand and murmured, you're going to admit defeat just like that? Don't worry. Master has his reasons for doing this. Long Fei Yi murmured back. You're certain? Han Yunqi didn't trust Kinzo at all. I'm certain. Long Fei Yi was certain. Han Yunqi furrowed her brows as she stared at him. She couldn't accept this, but in the end, she chose to believe him. She believed that Long Fei Yi wouldn't disappoint her. She only hoped that Elder Kinzo wouldn't disappoint Long Fei Yi. When the crowd finally dispersed, Elder Kinzo didn't even spare Han Yunqi a glance. Instead, he said to Long Fei Yi, come here. So speaking, he tapped his feet lightly and flew to the top of Celestial Mountain like a swallow. Senior brother, my antidote. Song Chiozi shouted. Elder Kinzo ignored him, But Zhang Qiuzi glared at Han Yunxi. Han Yunxi glared back at him angrily. This isn't over. Long Fei Yi carried Han Yunxi as he chased after Elder Kinzo. Although Elder Kinzo didn't allow Zhang Qiuzi to follow, he had no choice but to go to the top of Celestial Mountain. Although he didn't cry out in pain, his stomach was hurting so much that he couldn't bear a light touch. Zhang Qiuying had no choice but to help him fly up. Although Zhang Qiuying wasn't clear on her father's true relationship with Duanmu Yao, she knew that he must have colluded with the girl in the matter of Grand Concubine Yi. "Father," she murmured, "what does Master mean by this?" After years of neglect, he's still as shrewd as ever. "This isn't over," Zhang Qiuzi murmured back. "After you send me up, come down immediately and find your eldest senior brother. Tell him to prepare everything." "Prepare what?" Zhang Qiuying didn't understand. "Your eldest senior brother will understand," Zhang Qiuzi murmured back. Chapter 719. As soon as Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi's group reached the peak, news of Grand Concubine Yi's kidnapping spread through the mountains. Some said that Duanmu Yao had kidnapped Grand Concubine Yi to threaten Long Fei Yi to treat her injuries, but Han Yunxi caught hold of her weakness and instigated Long Fei Yi to cripple her martial arts. Some said that Han Yunxi bore a grudge against Head Elder for saving Duanmu Yao and poisoned him because she couldn't win in an argument. Some said that Long Fei Yi was so infatuated with Han Yunxi that he took the blame for Han Yunxi's crimes and was punished to reflect on his actions for a month. In the end, everyone came to the same conclusion. Han Yunxi was a vicious, merciless, and lawless woman. It was best not to provoke her for no good reason. But in truth, this was only the beginning. There was no conclusion yet. Han Yunxi was very surprised to reach the peak. There was only a single tree and a palace at the peak, so quiet that it seemed like another world. The tree was a peach blossom tree planted in front of the palace. Unlike other peach trees, this one was as tall as 2 people and had a huge crown. Its old trunk and branches were twisted in a picturesque manner. Despite the frigid temperatures of Celestial Mountain, it was still covered in blooming peach blossoms. When the cold wind kicked up, the petals danced in the air, creating a dreamy, surreal scene. A single peach blossom landed on Han Yunxi's nose. Han Yunxi sniffed lightly and felt the fragrance seep into her nostrils. Han Yunxi had always loved the beauty of falling petals, but she felt nothing when faced with peach blossoms. Long Fei Yi gently removed the petal from her arm and rubbed her nose lovingly. He didn't say much, but held her hand as they followed the Kinzo elder into the palace. The palace was known as Nine Shin Hall. It was so tall that its peak couldn't be seen. It couldn't be described as grand and solemn anymore, but as a mountain that rose from the ground to reach the 9 heavens. A mountain of mountains. It had stood at the peak of Celestial Mountain for hundreds of years, awe-inspiring for hundreds of years. It had been battered by wind, rain, lightning, and thunder for hundreds of years without falling. As long as it existed, Sky Mountain would also exist. Han Yunxi looked at the palace and was overwhelmed with shock. However, when she walked into the palace, only desolation was left in her heart. She subconsciously turned her head to look at the peach blossom trees outside the door. She couldn't help but feel sad. The enormous palace was filled with a bone-chilling coldness. It was an empty hall, devoid of anything and no one. Only Duanmu Yao and the servant girl in green were kneeling in the middle of the hall. They walked in the hall. Their footsteps were very light, but there would still be echoes. Han Yunxi couldn't help but wonder if this place had once been lively. When old Kinzo's beloved disciple was still alive, was this place warm? One person's departure could destroy another person's entire world. Han Yunxi unconsciously held Long Fei Yi's hand tightly. She thought, if something happened to Long Fei Yi, would she go crazy? What's wrong? Long Fei Yi could easily sense her uneasiness. It's very cold in here, Han Yunxi murmured. Long Fei Yi embraced her from behind. Bear with it, it won't take long. Zhang Qiuzi and Zhang Qiuying were still waiting by the door. Zhang Qiuying insisted on sending her father inside, but Song Qiuzi told her to leave immediately. In the end, Song Qiuying turned to leave in a hurry after Song Qiuzi said something. Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqi saw all of this. Old Kinzo only glanced at the scene, but it wasn't clear whether he took it to heart. He creased his brows and walked towards Duanmu Yao. Song Qiuzi clutched his stomach with one hand, while using his sword as a crutch with the other. He grit his teeth as he walked in step by step. Han Yunqi silently admired him. Even after being poisoned for so long, Song Qiuzi still had the strength to walk. As expected, his strength shouldn't be underestimated. Song Qiuzi already had a rough idea of the lost path poison. Old Kinzo was trying to minimize the problem, or else he'd have forced Han Yunqi to hand over the antidote long ago. No matter what, he couldn't give Han Yunqi and Long Fei Yi a chance to show evidence. His only option now was to infuriate Old Kinzo. He could only rely on Duanmu Yao for this. Song Qiuzi gained the upper hand as soon as he entered. Senior brother, it wasn't convenient for me to speak in front of all the disciples. But since we're here today, I have to say it. Han Yunqi is too vicious. She poisoned Yao Yao and ruined her face. From now on, Yao Yao can't see anyone. His words weren't just for Old Kinzo, but Duanmu Yao as well. As expected, Duanmu Yao tore off her mask to reveal her aged face and wailed. Master, you have to uphold justice for Yao Yao. Sob, master, senior brother bullied Yao Yao. Even Han Yunqi is bullying Yao Yao. Yao Yao doesn't want to live anymore. As she spoke, she suddenly slammed into a stone pillar at the side. She was so fast that even the maidservants beside her could not stop her. However, the sword sect master stopped her. In the blink of an eye, Old Kinzo had moved to block Duanmu Yao's path. Duanmu Yao was certain that her master would save her, so she seized the chance to hug Old Kinzo and buried herself in his arms. Old Kinzo knitted his brows as he pulled Duanmu Yao out of his arms. He looked at her face and sucked in a cold breath. Master, Yao Yao doesn't want to live anymore. I don't want to live anymore. Duanmu Yao cried. Old Kinzo immediately looked towards Han Yunqi and asked coldly, You did it? Yes. Han Yunqi admitted openly. She wanted to bring up Grand Concubine Yi, but Duanmu Yao spoke up again. Master, Yao Yao can't practice martial arts anymore. Yao Yao's dantian is ruined. Old Kinzo had already seen that Duanmu Yao's martial arts were ruined, but he didn't expect her dantian to be ruined as well. His eyes flashed viciously as he quickly took Duanmu Yao's pulse. His expression turned even uglier at the sight. Seeing this, Song Qiuzi exhaled in relief. Although his abdomen was in unbearable pain, he held on with all his might. Compared to the antidote, Duanmu Yao's sobs were more important. As long as Duanmu Yao made Old Kinzo lose all reason, he wouldn't listen to Han Yunqi or Long Fei Ye's explanations. With Duanmu Yao's status in Old Kinzo's heart, she had the skills to do so. In the silence of the room, Old Kinzo took Duanmu Yao's pulse again and again. Although he didn't speak, everyone could sense the killing intent emanating from him. Even the servant girl by Duanmu Yao's side couldn't help but back away, her heart on edge. Han Yunqi lowered her voice. Long Fei Yi, if this goes on, he'll go crazy. Old Kinzo might have Long Fei Ye's trust, but even he couldn't control his own mental illness. Han Yunqi was already regretting listening to Long Fei Ye's words. Still, Long Fei grabbed her hand and said, There's no rush. His cold gaze was fixed on Duanmu Yao as if waiting for something. Han Yunqi felt like she'd lost her mind to continue listening to him. Song Qiuzi was staring anxiously at Old Kinzo as well. His anticipation made him forget about the pain in his abdomen. He wasn't just waiting for Old Kinzo to lose his temper, but for Kinzo to go crazy as well. Of course, he had no idea that Old Kinzo had lost his mind, but he'd done his best to investigate for the sake of the sect leader's position over the years. More or less, he'd heard rumors about Old Kinzo's mental illness. Rumors said that Old Kinzo would lose all reason in a fit of rage. Only Duanmu Yao could pacify him. There's no smoke without fire. He'd asked Duanmu Yao about this in a roundabout way, but had been denied every time. Today, he wasn't only offending himself, but using Duanmu Yao to prove the truth of the rumors. He'd made ample preparations so that once Old Kinzo fell out with him, Or if old Kinzo went crazy, or if Long Fei Yi fell out with him, he didn't mind. He had vast power in his hands, and Celestial Mountain only had old Kinzo and Long Fei Yi. Even if he was poisoned, he still had Duanmu Yao to keep old Kinzo in check. Long Fei Yi wouldn't give him the antidote. He'd already told Song Qiuying to send word to his senior disciples. As long as he gave the order, the battle for the sect leader's position would begin at any time. Everyone stared at old Kinzo as the atmosphere grew tense. But Duanmu Yao suddenly withdrew her hand. "Master, hurry and treat Martial Uncle's poison. If you delay any longer, he'll die." If Martial Uncle didn't save him, Yao Yao wouldn't have come looking for you. Her interruption jolted old Kinzo back to his senses and realized Song Qiuzi's presence. "Master, the antidote's in Han Yunqi's hands," Duanmu Yao said again. She avoided the topic of her Dantian because she couldn't allow her master's secret to leak. He was her true support and the only one who could make decisions for her. Once his secret was exposed, Song Qiuzi would steal the sect leader's position. Then she'd never be able to shake him off for the rest of her life. Old Kinzo sensed his absent-mindedness, and a complicated look flickered past his eyes before he released Duanmu Yao. Han Yunqi's heart finally settled back into her chest. As long as old Kinzo didn't act up, she was willing to trust Long Fei Ye's trust in him. "Fei, where's the antidote?" Kinzo asked angrily. Seeing this, Song Qiuzi grew doubtful. Could it be that the rumors were just rumors and Duanmu Yao wasn't lying to me? Why is this stupid girl in such a rush to help me get the antidote? "Senior brother, I can hold on. Hurry and take a look at Yao Yao. Perhaps her Dantian can still be saved," Song Qiuzi coaxed with concern. He knew Duanmu Yao's Dantian like the back of his hand. There was no way to save it. She really can't be saved. Old Kinzo shot Long Fei Yi a cold look. "Junior brother, if anything happens to you again, even I as the sect leader won't be able to escape the blame." Song Qiuzi grew uneasy. "If I can't anger old Kinzo, then I'll cure the poison first. I'll take it one step at a time." Although this wasn't the best time to seize the sect leader's position, he'd throw caution to the wind if Long Fei Yi forced him into a corner. Just then, Long Fei had been betting on Duanmu Yao's guts. He was certain she wouldn't have the guts to expose his master's insanity in front of everyone. "Master, this disciple doesn't have the antidote," he replied simply. "You're the one who shouldered this crime. Who else should I ask for the antidote from?" Kinzo retorted unhappily. "This disciple's crime is that he offended his superiors and had no respect for his elders," Long Fei Yi replied calmly. "Whether he's right or wrong, this disciple has no right to raise his hand against Martial Uncle. Martial Uncle's judgment belongs to Master and the Abstinence Courtyard." Han Yunqi suddenly felt at ease. She could tell that Master and disciple were putting on a show. She'd finally changed her opinion of old Kinzo. She'd like to see how Kinzo won Long Fei Ye's trust. Chapter 720. Kinzo laughed coldly. "Right or wrong? You hurt Yao Yao like this and still have the face to debate right and wrong with your master?" "Master, my Mu Fei is still lying unconscious in the estate. Forget about hurting her. Even killing her isn't enough to vent my anger," Long Fei Yi said bluntly. Kinzo's eyes flashed with displeasure. Just what happened? Actually, his personal guard had told him everything as soon as he emerged from closed-door cultivation, but he never expected Duanmu Yao to be so seriously injured. He was well aware of Long Fei Yi and Song Qiuzi's argument in front of Celestial Sword's main hall. His displeasure stemmed from Long Fei Yi's second sentence. Long Fei Yi explained everything that had happened in front of Celestial Sword's main hall. "Master, Yunqi poisoned Martial Uncle Song with the same poison she used that day in the fog. If Martial Uncle Song arrived at Kong Lake later, then he should be able to treat his stomach pain. There's no need for Yunqi to give him the antidote." Long Fei Yi didn't finish the story, but everyone understood that if Song Qiuzi couldn't treat the poison, then it meant he was lying in ambush by Kong Lake. Song Qiuzi fell silent, knowing he had nothing to say. Duanmu Yao was still in disbelief. She never expected Han Yunqi to have such a trick up her sleeve. In other words, The person who helped them escape the fog was also a poisons expert? She had no time to think about who it was now. How could she argue in the face of reality? She could only admit her wrongs. She could admit her wrongs, but what about Song Chiozi? Duanmu Yao's hairs stood on end as she realized the severity of the situation. If Master wanted to punish Song Chiozi, he might drag her down with him and expose the most shameful thing between them. She couldn't imagine how Master would react if he found out what had happened between her and Song Chiozi. Would Master think she was dirty? Would he cripple her? Duanmu Yao's mind went taut as she stared fixedly at Song Chiozi, her heart pounding in her chest. If she had regretted it before, then she was thoroughly regretting it now. There was no turning back. Junior brother Song, do you have anything else to say? The Kenzo elder coldly asked. Long Feiyi, as Yao Yao's senior martial brother, not only did he not help her, he even slandered her. I can't stand by and watch. I didn't stop them. I just wanted to protect Yao Yao. Song Chiozi was in so much pain that he fell to one knee. Still, he spoke confidently. If I hadn't followed her, Yao Yao would have died for sure. So you're saying that I should be grateful to you? The old man in Kenzo sneered. I saved the sect leader's beloved disciple's life. If the sect leader still insists on punishing me, then please do as you please. Song Chiozi's attitude hardened. Duanmu Yao was so frightened that all the hairs on her body opened up. She always assumed that Song Chiozi wasn't strong enough to challenge Master to his face, but now it looked like she'd underestimated his strength. What she had done in the past 2 years was like asking a tiger for its skin. Han Yunshi could smell the tension in the air as well. Song Chiozi was poisoned and had committed a serious crime. So where did he get the confidence to be so aggressive? Any kind of arrogance required sufficient capital. Han Yunshi discovered a frightening truth. The old man in Kenzo actually feared Song Chiozi. That was why he tried to minimize the problem and put on a show with Long Feiyi. The old man in Kenzo was furious. Punish as you please? Did you think this honorable lord closed the doors just to punish you? As he spoke, he pointed at Long Feiyi and started cursing him. Do you know why Master punished you first? Because you were in the wrong first. So Master knew the truth long ago. Long Feiyi lowered his head as he murmured. Hee, how could this honorable lord not know when all the disciples from the 2 depositories and courtyards were watching the show? Do you all think this honorable lord is blind and deaf? This honorable lord rarely interfered with the affairs of the sect these past few years, but I know exactly what you've all been doing. The old man in Kenzo turned around. Song Chiozi, as the head of Lockhart Courtyard and leader of the 4 elders, you actually dared to do such foolish things with your juniors. It's one thing for Yao Yao to be insensible, but you had the gall to collude with assassins as well. If this honorable lord hadn't emerged in time today, where would your face be? Where would my celestial mountain's prestige be? Song Chiozi fell silent with his head bowed. The old man in Kenzo's temper was still burning. Fei offended his superiors and was in the wrong first. You disrespected your elders and were in the wrong later. This honorable lord didn't punish you in front of all the disciples not because I was giving you face, but because I was giving face to the Council of Elders and my Tianshan Kenzo. Song Chiozi's eyes flickered between light and darkness as his emotions grew complicated. He never expected Kenshin to have such thoughts. It looks like Kenshin hasn't changed a bit after all these years. Kenzo's prestige and reputation were more important than anything else in his heart. In this case, it looked like Kenshin wasn't planning to publicize the fact that he'd colluded with the City of Daughters to kidnap Grand Concubine Yi, nor was he planning to punish him. As long as there was no punishment, he wouldn't go to war. After all, he could rope in more factions for the upcoming ranking matches and Celestial Sword Assembly. It wouldn't be too late to make his move then. Moreover, Long Feiyi had brought Han Yunshi to Celestial Mountain. This was the perfect chance for him to use Duanmu Yao to sow discord between Long Feiyi and Li Kenshin's master-disciple relationship. Song Chiozi's restless heart finally calmed down. After waiting patiently for so many years, he didn't mind waiting another 2 or 3 months. He relaxed his guard and used the cramps in his abdomen as an excuse to feign weakness. He collapsed at Song Chiozi's feet and curled into a ball. Senior brother, I know my wrongs. I'm willing to accept punishment. Hearing this, Duanmu Yao's taut nerves finally relaxed. She was so scared that she almost collapsed. Unconsciously, she pressed a hand to her chest and secretly rejoiced. You're grounded in Lockhart Courtyard for a month. Kenzo declared cold. Failing to pass Abstinence Courtyard wasn't an overt punishment, but a secret one. Moreover, it wasn't a severe punishment either, but similar to Long Fei Ye's 1 month of reflection. However, Long Fei Ye's punishment was an overt one that left him with a bit of face. That was more like a sect leader's demeanor. Song Chiozi relaxed even more as he laughed coldly in his heart. It looks like Li Qinshin hasn't noticed all the big moves I've made over the past few years. Thank you, senior brother, he said heavily as he clutched his stomach. Kenzo finally looked Han Yunqi in the eye. Cold, he said. What are you standing there for? Hurry and hand over the antidote. Han Yunqi felt much more relaxed now that a crisis had been averted. She poked at her fingers with an apologetic expression. Senior Kenzo, this poison. What's with the nonsense? Hand over the antidote. Kenzo was losing his patience. There's no antidote for this poison. Han Yunqi was telling the truth. Kenzo grew fierce and ignored Han Yunqi to address Long Fei Yi cold. Antidote. Master, if Yunqi says there's no antidote, then there's no antidote. There's nothing I can do. Long Fei Yi intoned. Kenzo finally realized that Han Yunqi wasn't joking. Alarmed, Song Chiozi exclaimed, What? While Kenzo ignored Han Yunqi was too lazy to pay attention to him. Although she couldn't settle scores right now, she could still torment Song Chiozi a little. Kenzo spared Song Chiozi for the sake of Celestial Mountain and Kenzo's political situation. She could understand. Understanding didn't equate to agreement. As a good daughter-in-law, if she didn't make Song Chiozi suffer more, then she'd be letting down the unconscious grand concubine E. She crouched down in front of Song Chiozi with an apologetic expression. Elder Song, do you still remember the female assassins at Lost Void Lake? Song Chiozi looked past Han Yunqi to Kenzo. Senior brother. He was already at his limits, but he didn't want to be like that in front of Li Qinshin and Long Fei Yi. If there was no one else around, he'd be rolling on the ground right now. The pain had already spread up from his abdomen. His internal organs felt like they were being twisted together. It was so painful that he couldn't even breathe. Senior brother, this damn girl is too impudent. I, an elder of Celestial Mountain, was actually. If news of this got out, what face would my Lockhart Courtyard have left? Song Chiozi endured the pain as he spoke with righteous indignation. Han Yunqi was already used to people like him being hypocritical and disgusting. She feigned panic and said, Elder Song, don't say that. I really didn't do it on purpose. There's really no antidote for this poison. It's not fatal, so you'll be fine after 3 days and 3 nights of pain. The poison will disperse on its own. You're lying. Song Chiozi grew angrier as the pain intensified. All the female assassins at Lost Void Lake died. Do you think old man doesn't know? Han Yunqi and Long Fei Yi had brought back many of the assassins' corpses from the City of Daughters. Song Chiozi had been keeping an eye on them all this time. Aggrieved, Han Yunqi pouted. It's not like it's my fault. They weren't poisoned to death, but from pain. If you want to blame someone, you can only blame their bodies for being too delicate to bear pain. She grew serious and explained, Martial Uncle Song, don't worry. This kind of poison was not fatal. Only those women with delicate bodies would die from the pain. Martial Uncle Song is a man, so at most your legs will turn to jelly. Go back and rest for 3 days, then I guarantee you'll be fine. Song Chiozi's ashen face turned ashen at her words. Although those assassins were women, they were still assassins who'd undergone all sorts of hellish training since childhood. If even professional assassins could die from the pain, what kind of pain would that be? It's only been half a day, so how am I supposed to survive the next 2.5 days? Long Fei Yi couldn't help but grin. His lips curved into a mesmerizing grin. Kenzo was expressionless, but his patience had improved. He didn't urge Han Yunqi. Duanmu Yao sat paralyzed on one side. looking anxiously at Song Chiozi. For the first time, she admired Han Yunqi's poison skills from the bottom of her heart. Although she knew it was impossible, she still hoped that Song Chiozi would die from the pain. Song Chiozi never expected the poison to be so frightening. He regretted that he'd gotten carried away with his success and carelessness. That was why he'd been hit by Han Yunqi's needle. How could he die from a single needle before he'd even realized his ambitions? Finally, he gave up and sent a pleading look towards Kinzo. "Senior brother, save me." Kinzo coughed lightly before looking towards Long Fei Yi. In the end, he didn't want to talk to Han Yunqi, but Long Fei Yi avoided his gaze and pretended not to notice. Chapter 721. Long Fei Yi avoided the Kinzo's gaze, leaving the Kinzo to negotiate with Han Yunqi on his own. Of course he was happy to see Song Chiozi tortured, but there had to be a limit. If something unexpected happened to Song Chiozi, or if he really died of poison today, then all his efforts to turn a big problem into a small one would be for naught. After all, Song Chiozi was at the peak of Celestial Mountain, while a large group of people were waiting to betray him. The Kinzo didn't want internal strife on Celestial Mountain. The Kinzo was about to speak when Duanmu Yao cried and begged, "Master, senior brother, please save Martial Uncle Song. This matter is all my fault. It's all because of me that Martial Uncle Song has to suffer." Yao Yao is willing to take his punishment in his place. If he has to hurt for 3 days and 3 nights, Yao Yao will bear the pain for him. Duanmu Yao wanted nothing more than for Song Chiozi to die, so why was she begging now? It was obvious that Song Chiozi had just shot her a warning look. She had no choice but to beg. At the same time, she hoped that Long Fei Yi would be unyielding to the end, and that Han Yunqi wouldn't budge an inch. She never thought that a proud woman like her would place all her hopes on Han Yunqi one day. What did it mean to lose? This was it, wasn't it? Duanmu Yao had lost the last shred of her pride and backbone. The Kinzo grew irritated at the sight of Duanmu Yao sobbing. He said coldly, "Han Yunqi, you were the one who poisoned him. No matter what, you have to treat it. Celestial Mountain doesn't tolerate your impudence." Han Yunqi was helpless. "Senior Kinzo, there really isn't an antidote for this poison. Moreover, even anesthetics won't stop the pain. The only way is to forget about it." "Forget? Han Yunqi, do you think we're all 3-year-olds? Song Chiozi raged. Han Yunqi hastened to explain. "Actually, there's no antidote for this poison, but it can still be treated. Forget about it, and you'll be cured. As for how to forget, I have my ways." If this was any other day, Song Chiozi wouldn't believe Han Yunqi's nonsense. But now that he was in so much pain that he almost didn't look human anymore, Song Chiozi still harbored some hope in his heart. "What method? Hurry and tell me." Han Yunqi stammered. "This? Elder Song, this method is really... Actually, Elder Song, what do you want me to say? Just say what you need to say." The sword sect master finally lost his patience. Han Yunqi glanced at him innocently and said pitifully, "After being poisoned, the more you focus on your abdomen, the more intense the pain will be. If Elder Song has good willpower and sufficient mental strength, you can meditate and hypnotize yourself. Naturally, you will forget about it." Elder Kinzo, Long Fei Yi, and Duanmu Yao all felt that these words made sense. Meditating and letting one's mind wander was not difficult for martial artists. But Song Chiozi was so angry that he wanted to kick off his shoes and beat Han Yunqi to death. Those who hadn't experienced it firsthand would never be able to empathize. Even professional assassins couldn't stand the pain, so how could he ignore it? He hadn't ignored the pain from Celestial Sword's main hall, but he'd forced himself to endure it. Now he couldn't hold it in any longer. If we could ignore it, old man, why would old man waste time here? Song Chiozi's attitude hardened. "Han Yunqi, are you going to cure the poison or not?" Kinzo glanced at Long Fei Yi, but Long Fei Yi continued to ignore him. Kinzo creased his brows and muttered, "Fei, a cornered dog will jump over a wall." Long Fei Yi replied, "Yunqi walks dogs often, so she can tie them down." Kinzo immediately glared at him, But Long Fei Yi only gave him a reassuring look. Still, Long Fei Yi didn't seem convinced, so Long Fei Yi muttered again, "Master, shall we make a bet?" Kinzo finally averted his eyes and dropped the subject. Han Yunqi would never disappoint. She crouched down in front of Tsang Qiuzi, her attitude even stiffer than his. "Elder Tsang, I said there's no antidote, so there's no antidote. I urge you to stop getting angry and calm your heart to forget the pain in your abdomen. Otherwise, you'll have to bear the consequences." Tsang Qiuzi's heart gave a lurch. He had already prepared for the worst and used Duanmu Yao to threaten Li Qinshin so he could force Long Fei Yi to hand over the antidote. But now it looked like Han Yunqi wasn't lying. There really was no antidote to this poison. Even if he tried to stir up internal strife, it'd be useless. The position of sect leader and supremacy of the martial arts circles would never be as important as his life. If he really died here, then everything he'd built up over the years would fall into someone else's hands for nothing. In the face of life and death, all grandeur was insignificant. Finally, Tsang Qiuzi grew afraid. Is there any way to make old man forget this pain? Tell me. Use pain to stop pain. Han Yunqi took out a long, thin needle. "Elder Tsang, I'll help you." So speaking, she took Tsang Qiuzi's hand. Before anyone could figure out what she was planning, the needle had already pierced between Tsang Qiuzi's fingernails. "Ah!" Tsang Qiuzi cried out in pain. "Han Yunqi, old man's going to kill you." Han Yunqi quickly backed away. Fortunately, Tsang Qiuzi was weak from the pain, or else he might have killed her with a single blow. Han Yunqi's needle had practically pierced through his fingernails, causing Tsang Qiuzi to break out in cold sweat from the pain. He glared at her, his gaze sharp enough to kill. Han Yunqi didn't speak, but stood at a distance with a slight smile. She was as harmless as an angel, but also reminiscent of a demon. Kinzo's gaze towards her was now filled with curiosity instead of disdain. Tsang Qiuzi was about to lose his temper when he realized something was wrong. The pain in his abdomen seemed to have subsided. He looked at his bleeding fingers, then at Han Yunqi. "How could this be?" he asked doubtfully. "Elder Tsang, if you don't have enough willpower to ignore the pain, then you can only use pain to stop pain. The 10 fingers are connected to the heart, so the pain from a needle piercing your fingers is far greater than the pain in your abdomen. The pain caused by the poison could be fatal. With Elder Tsang's tolerance level, the pain caused by this kind of external force is only physical pain. I believe that Elder Tsang will be able to endure it." As Han Yunqi spoke, she added, "One needle can last for 2 hours, so I'll give this needle to you." Han Yunqi purposely placed the needle in Tsang Qiuzi's hands. In the silence of the room, Tsang Qiuzi stared at the needle, seemingly hesitating. Kinzo and Duanmu Yao were watching as well. Their expressions varied. Only Long Fei Ye's gaze was fixed on Han Yunqi. The more he looked, the more he liked her. He couldn't take his eyes off her. Needles piercing his fingers was nothing short of torture. What did she mean by using pain to stop pain? This was simply using torture to stop the pain. Tsang Qiuzi didn't want to believe Han Yunqi's words, but the results were right before his eyes. His abdomen didn't hurt as much as before. He had to believe her. After some hesitation, Tsang Qiuzi looked towards Kinzo. "Senior brother, I'll believe her this once." In other words, he wanted Elder Kinzo to take responsibility. Kinzo didn't trust Han Yunqi either, but he still nodded decisively. "Someone come," sent head elder back. As soon as Tsang Qiuzi reached Celestial Peak, he was picked up by the Lockhart courtyard. He immediately took a few drops of his blood and dripped it onto a piece of paper before wrapping it up with Han Yunqi's needle. Then he had someone send a flying hawk message to Northernly under Duanmu Yao's name. Duanmu Yao and Junixia were close friends, so Junixia would definitely help him. He didn't know of Bai Yanqing's existence, but as he saw it, Han Yunqi's poison could only be cured by Junixia. Although the pain was temporarily relieved, he still couldn't fully trust Han Yunqi. He not only wanted to know if there was really no cure for the poison in his abdomen, but whether Han Yunqi's needle had been poisoned. This woman's poison skills were frightening. As long as she got the chance, she could kill someone without leaving a trace. Back at Nine Xin Hall, Elder Kinzo spoke coldly to Long Fei Yi and Duanmu Yao as soon as Tsang Qiuzi left. You too, come with this senior. Duanmu Yao's heart rejoiced as she rose to follow. Now that Song Chiozi's matter was resolved, Master would definitely hold Long Fei Yi responsible for hurting her. Han Yunqi had no right to interfere if he did so behind closed doors. Wait for me, Long Fei Yi murmured to Han Yunqi. Han Yunqi didn't want to let go. Just then, Elder Kinzo had been filled with killing intent when he found out about Duanmu Yao's Dantian injury. If not for Song Chiozi's presence, he would have lost his mind long ago. Now Elder Kinzo had calmed down, but that didn't mean he wasn't angry. Heaven knows how he'd punish Long Fei Yi. I had a part to play in hurting her too. If Elder Kinzo wants to be biased, I'll take the blame with you, Han Yunqi murmured. Don't worry, Master knows what he's doing, Long Fei Yi said mildly. Han Yunqi didn't believe him, but Long Fei Yi added, if Master wasn't fair, I wouldn't have come to Celestial Mountain today. If Elder Kinzo wasn't such a man, Long Fei Yi wouldn't have dared to bring Han Yunqi to Celestial Mountain after hurting Duanmu Yao. As long as he didn't lose his mind, Elder Kinzo would always be a father figure in Long Fei Yi's heart. Only then did Han Yunqi release him. I'll wait for you. Elder Kinzo's figure had already disappeared into the darkness, but he still stopped to look back at Han Yunqi. Lass, he asked curiously, is there really such a thing as using pain to stop pain? Duanmu Yao was startled. If she remembered correctly, Master had only ever called her Lass, but now he was calling Han Yunqi Lass as well? Besides Gu calling her Poison Lass, which she'd gotten used to, Han Yunqi didn't like it when others called her Lass. After all, she was a married woman. But hearing Elder Kinzo call her Lass made her feel inexplicably close. She smiled and replied, using pain to stop pain is just a trick I used to fool Song Chiozi. There's an antidote for this kind of poison. The needle I gave him just then was the antidote. But the antidote takes effect slowly, so the pain will only lessen rather than disappear immediately. With Song Chiozi's cowardly personality, he'll definitely continue to hurt himself with needles. Han Yunqi was especially confident in her explanations. In the dim light, her eyes sparkled with a moving splendor. Her radiant self was like a ray of light that illuminated the entire hall. Kinzo looked at her for a long time before saying, besides this honored one in Fei, you're the only one who can trick Song Chiozi. Is he praising me? Before Han Yunqi could understand, Elder Kinzo had already vanished with Duanmu Yao. Long Fei Yi gave Han Yunqi a reassuring look before disappearing into the darkness as well. Han Yunqi, wait. Chapter 722. Han Yunqi waited anxiously in the first hall while Long Fei Yi and the rest were upstairs in the second hall. Nine Xin Hall had 9 floors in total. Besides the 9th floor where old Kinzo lived, the other 8 floors were all empty and dark. Candlelight only illuminated a small tea table. Long Fei Yi sat there steeping tea while old Kinzo treated Duanmu Yao's wounds. He didn't say a word as soon as they reached the 2nd floor, but kept sending true qi into Duanmu Yao in an attempt to salvage the situation. Unfortunately, all of his true qi dissipated as soon as it entered Duanmu Yao's Dantian. Since Duanmu Yao's Dantian couldn't gather qi, it was as good as crippled. In a short while, old Kinzo had used up a layer of his inner qi, but he persisted. He didn't blame Long Fei Yi or console Duanmu Yao, but seemed lost in his own world. Again and again, he used up his precious true qi to save his last hope. Long Fei Yi drank his tea in silence. Although he was looking at his master, his thoughts were on Han Yunqi. Actually, Han Yunqi had lied to his master just then. Back at Lost Void Lake, Han Yunqi had told him that the poison had no antidote. He didn't know what Han Yunqi had planned, but he knew that Han Yunqi didn't tell him because she feared Duanmu Yao would tell on her. It was impossible for Han Yunqi's needle to have an antidote, but why was it able to relieve his pain? What was her motive for giving it to Song Chiozi? If not for his misgivings, he would never have allowed her to do that. Master, it's no use, it's no use. Sob sob, master. Don't waste any more true chi. Sob sob, Yao Yao has let you down. I've let Shermu down. Master, Yao Yao's so sad. Duanmu Yao began to sob. Only then did the old man Kinzo stop. Unlike the murderous aura from before, he only let out a long sigh and buried all the pain in his heart. He had always been calm, but there would always be times when he missed her. There would always be times when he could not hide the pain. There would always be times when he wanted to go completely crazy. If he went crazy, he might be able to forget about it. Long Fei Yi looked up and said coldly, Duanmu Yao, you should be thanking the heavens that this prince didn't kill you. As soon as he finished speaking, the Kinzo old man flicked his sleeves and left. A powerful gust of wind hit Chong Fei Yi. It didn't hurt him, but it shattered the teacup in his hand. Your junior sister is already in this state. What else do you want? Kinzo is not someone without a temper. Long Fei Yi immediately stood up and said coldly, she colluded with Madame Long Yu and kidnapped my imperial mother. If not for Yunqi's ability to recognize poisons and guide the mosquitoes, I would have died in the maze long ago. If she dares to do something, then she has to admit it. If she dares to provoke your lordship, then she has to be unafraid of death. How could someone who craves life and fears death be worthy of being a disciple of Kinzo? I'm not afraid of death. I'm just afraid that I'll fail to live up to Master's expectations and fulfill Shimong's dying wish. I won't be able to learn the Xian swordplay, Duanmu Yao explained hastily. Master had always doted on her and taught her the Xian swordplay, one of Celestial Mountain's top sword styles. At first, she thought her master favored her because of her talents, but later realized it was because her talents were very similar to her late Shimong's. Back then, Shimong's wife didn't have the Xian swordplay, so Master hoped she could learn it. Duanmu Yao also knew that Master's insanity was caused by Shimong's death. In the beginning, she would practice the Xian swordplay to calm him down when he fell ill. Gradually, she stopped practicing the sword and only needed to stay by his side to calm him down. She was very clear that Master didn't really dote on her. She wasn't even a substitute, but a shadow at most. Master only wanted to borrow her talents to learn the Xian swordplay and fulfill Shimong's dying wish. Long Fei Yi gave a cold snort. A woman like you isn't fit to fulfill Shimong's dying wish. If you weren't so heartless, if you didn't go against Master's orders and refuse to treat me, I wouldn't have made such a huge mistake. Duanmu Yao couldn't explain herself, so she tried to shift the blame. She grabbed hold of the Kinzo old man and cried pitifully. Master, this disciple has written to you time and time again. You know what the situation is like, too. This disciple even brought back your letters for senior brother to see, but senior brother he just won't treat this disciple's injuries. Senior brother is too heartless. Excuses. Song Chiozi's martial arts skills far surpass your lordship's. If you could collude with him, why didn't you let him treat your injuries? Long Fei Yi asked. Duanmu Yao's main goal in kidnapping Grand Concubine Yi was to kill Han Yunqi. Treating her injuries was secondary. I didn't collude with Martial Uncle Song. He was only helping me. As she spoke, her sobs grew louder. Didn't I? Didn't you still like you? I like you. I like you. Long Fei Yi, I only want you to treat my injuries. As long as you... Sob. Duanmu Yao knelt on the ground, her hands covering her old face as she sobbed. Part of her sobs was an act, but part of her true feelings. If there was no Han Yunqi, if senior brother liked her, none of this would have happened. She should have been very happy. Long Fei Ye's irritation was written all over his face. He was about to speak when the Kinzo old man glared at him. You still haven't quarreled enough? As her senior brother, can't you yield to her? Long Fei Yi wasn't in the mood to argue with Duanmu Yao. He simply wanted to use this chance to tell his master that it was impossible between him and Duanmu Yao. He wanted his master to give up on any thoughts of entrusting Duanmu Yao to him. The Kinzo old man helped Duanmu Yao to her feet and led her to the tea table. With a soft sigh, he said, "Both of you are in the wrong. Yao Yao, actually your senior brother was seriously injured back then. That's why he couldn't treat your injuries. Master knows this." Duanmu Yao didn't believe him. When Long Fei Yi had written to the Kinzo old man about the seal, the Kinzo old man already knew what was going on. The seal was Long Fei Yi's own secret. The Kinzo old man knew his limits and naturally wouldn't let Duanmu Yao know. "Yao Yao, you still don't believe your master's words?" asked the Kinzo old man. Duanmu Yao had nothing to say. Unexpectedly, Long Fei Yi added, "Even if this prince wasn't injured, I still wouldn't treat her injuries." Duanmu Yao was furious. "Master, listen to this. Listen to this." The Kinzo old man's expression was ugly. He was about to reprimand her when Long Fei Yi said, "This prince would never do anything to make Han Yunqi angry." Duanmu Yao cried again. She buried her head in the tea table and sobbed loudly. "Master, he's bullying me." Sob sob. "He and Han Yunqi are bullying me together. My father doesn't want me. My mother's dead, and everyone in the world is bullying me." Sob sob. "I don't want to live anymore." The Kinzo old man furrowed his brows. He didn't know what to do with his two disciples. One was pampered and spoiled, while the other was stubborn. He had always indulged Yao Yao's personality, while he admired and was angry at Fei's stubbornness. Enough. This matter ends here. Who could the Kinzo old man punish? He couldn't bear to punish Duanmu Yao, but he couldn't bear to punish Long Fei Yi either. Moreover, he still had a lot of responsibilities to entrust to Long Fei Yi in the next few months. Now wasn't the time to talk about his daughter's affairs. Duanmu Yao had a guilty conscience. She knew that if not for her mistress, her master would have handed her over to the abstinence courtyard long ago. Seeing her master's attitude, she knew when to stop. But Long Fei Yi wasn't going to let it go so easily. "My Mu Fei's still unconscious." "Duanmu Yao, just what did you do to her?" Long Fei Yi asked. "If you don't explain yourself today, this matter won't end." Chu Shifeng had been torturing the Long clan captives over the past few days, but got nothing out of them. There had to be something fishy about the kidnapping of Grand Concubine Yi. Just who was the poisons expert at the other end of the lost passage? How was Long Fei Yi supposed to explain things to Han Yunqi if he didn't get answers from Duanmu Yao? Grand Concubine Yi was just frightened. How could she not wake up? Duanmu Yao retorted, "You have to ask about that. You were the one who kidnapped her." Long Fei Yi gave a cold snort. I didn't do anything. I didn't kidnap her, but Lady Long Yu. I didn't even touch Grand Concubine Yi." Duanmu Yao explained hastily. "When I went to Lost Void Lake, Lady Long Yu had long taken Grand Concubine Yi with her. You were the one who hired Long Yu. How could you not know what she did to Grand Concubine Yi?" Long Fei Yi asked next. The old man and Kinzo didn't interrupt them, but listened intently. The rules of the assassin world dictated that they would sell their lives for money. Assassins would do whatever their employer asked for. On the other hand, they wouldn't do anything without their employer's request. It was impossible for Duanmu Yao to be unaware of Grand Concubine Yi's coma. "I don't know." Duanmu Yao averted her gaze as she denied it. "Yao Yao, you're still not telling the truth?" The old man and Kinzo suddenly grew angry. Duanmu Yao gave a fright before admitting, Actually, I wasn't the one who hired Lady Long Yu. Lady Long Yu kidnapped Grand Concubine Yi first before finding me. Senior brother, you must have a grudge against Lady Long Yu, so she's taking revenge." Long Fei Yi knew what was going on at her words. "When you and Song Chiozi escaped the maze, someone secretly cured your poison. Did you know?" Long Fei Yi asked next. "Was it that sneak attacker? Maybe it was Lady Long Yu's helper. I'm not sure either." Duanmu Yao told the truth. "Your lordship has no grudge against Lady Long Yu, but perhaps I have a deep-seated grudge against that expert poisons expert." Long Fei Yi said. Duanmu Yao didn't understand, nor did she want to. She only wanted this matter to pass. The old man and Kinzo rapped Duanmu Yao's head. "You lass, when will you grow a brain? You were used to murder your senior brother without knowing a thing." "Master, Yao Yao knows her wrongs." "Master, Please help Yao Yao. Yao Yao still hasn't learned the Xian swordplay. Duanmu Yao seized the chance to curry favor with her master. She knew that although her master looked calm, he was actually sadder than she was. He would definitely think of a way to save her. The old man in Kinzo hated Iron for failing to meet his expectations. He wiped away Duanmu Yao's tears and said, "Go back and rest. Master will help you think of a way." Thrilled, Duanmu Yao rose to her feet to express her thanks. But before she left, she turned back and said, "Senior brother, Yao Yao knows her wrongs. Yao Yao apologizes to you." Long Fei Yi ignored her. Duanmu Yao knew he wouldn't, because he was only putting on an act for the old man and Kinzo to see. Aggrieved, she hung her head and turned to leave. Once she was gone, the old man and Kinzo began to coax, "Fei, Yao Yao is still. It's a great fortune that Master was able to control his inner demons today." Long Fei Yi changed the subject. It was very dangerous. The old man in Kinzo was very clear about his own situation. Just then, he had almost exposed himself in front of Zhang Qiuzi. Duanmu Yao's martial arts are already crippled. Why does Master need to take the chance to cut off all hopes? With Duanmu Yao around, you'll be even worse off. Why must you torture yourself like this? Long Fei asked. The old man in Kinzo fell silent for a long time before he said, "Fei, you don't understand." Long Fei Yi wanted to coax him again, but the old man in Kinzo suddenly said coldly, "Yao Yao made a big mistake this time, but Master won't bicker with you. Next time you hurt her, don't blame Master for being merciless. This matter ends here." Long Fei Yi knew his master would react this way, but he was still stunned. Master can save her? If Duanmu Yao could be saved, then what about Gu Beiwei? Chapter 723. Faced with Long Fei Yi's shock, the old man in Kinzo replied firmly, "It's not that you can save her, but that you must." "How?" Long Fei Yi asked hastily. The old man in Kinzo didn't reply, but looked cold as he scrutinized Long Fei Yi. Since when did this brat care so much about Yao Yao? He must be up to no good. Long Fei Yi sensed his master's suspicion and said directly, "This disciple isn't interested in Duanmu Yao's injuries. This disciple has a friend whose dantian is also badly damaged. He can't gather qi, and his martial arts are crippled. If there's a way to treat him, please give me some pointers, master." The old man in Kinzo rejected him. "There's no way to save him. Give up on that thought." "But Duanmu Yao." Long Fei Yi wanted to ask more, but the old man in Kinzo cut him off unhappily. "Take care of yourself." Long Fei Yi immediately shut his mouth, his eyes cold. He was cold by nature, so all he said was a few words to his respected master. The old man in Kinzo pulled Long Fei Yi over to take his pulse and asked, "You used the lust bite energy again to kill Lady Lungyu, didn't you?" Long Fei Yi's revenge on Lady Lungyu and his gift of the City of Daughters to Han Yunshi had long shaken Cloud Realm's martial arts circles. Even now, the entire martial arts community was still talking about it. Naturally, the old man in Kinzo was paying attention. Long Fei Yi didn't reply, but the old man in Kinzo realized something was wrong after taking his pulse. He asked in shock, "Your internal injuries are all healed? How is that possible?" Long Fei Yi had written a letter saying that he'd suffered a backlash from the lust bite energy when he broke the seal on his own for the first time in Medicine Requesting Cave. That was why he couldn't treat Duanmu Yao's injuries. Moreover, he must have broken the seal again to deal with Lady Lungyu, or he wouldn't have been able to kill Lady Lungyu in 3 moves. His old injuries hadn't healed, and now there were new ones. His internal injuries should be severe. How long had it been? How could he have recovered completely? But judging from his pulse, not only was this kid completely healed, his internal energy seemed to have improved a lot. Before Long Fei Yi could answer, the old man suddenly threw a punch at him. Long Fei Yi's lips curled into a smile and immediately countered the old man's punch. Fist against fist, the master and disciple began to compete. Soon, the old Kinzo sensed Long Fei Yi's powerful inner qi. He was shocked and instantly released a powerful force to test Long Fei Yi. He did not expect Long Fei Yi to withstand it. The Kinzo elder is in disbelief and exerts more force. This time, Long Fei Yi is unable to withstand it, but he only takes a few steps back and did not let go. The old man Kinzo was the first to let go. He was shocked. When did you reach the 7th rank? Celestial Sword Kinzo only had one set of inner chi cultivation methods, the Nirvana Heart Arts. However, the Nirvana Heart Arts had 9 ranks, from 1 to 9. Each rank differed greatly from the other, and the higher the rank, the greater the gap. Different ranks of inner chi allowed one to cultivate different sword skills and wield different treasured swords. Even the disciples of the branch factions at the foot of Celestial Mountain were only at the 5th rank of Nirvana Heart Arts. Of the 4 elders of Celestial Mountain, the 2nd and 3rd elders of the Sword and Scripture Depositories, and Granny Yu of the Abstinence Courtyard were all at the 6th rank. Only Tsang Chiozi was at the 7th rank. Being at the 7th rank was already very impressive. After all, no one besides the old Kinzo elder in Tianshan Kinzo's history had ever surpassed the 7th rank. The old man Kinzo was one of Tianshan Kinzo's miracles. He'd reached the 8th rank of the Nirvana Heart Arts in his lifetime. The old man Kinzo had only reached the 7th rank when he was 30 years old, and the 8th when he was almost 60. Tsang Chiozi had only reached the 7th rank 5 years ago. Long Fei Yi, on the other hand, was only in his 20s. Compared to the old man Kinzo, Long Fei Yi was even more of a miracle. A year ago, Long Fei Yi replied. Actually, if Tsang Chiozi hadn't injured him, he would have advanced even faster. When did you reach the 6th rank? It only took you a year to reach the 7th rank? Long Fei Yi had only reached the 5th rank during his last closed-door cultivation at the peak of Celestial Mountain. Even the cool-headed old man Kinzo couldn't hide his astonishment. Tsang Chiozi had spent a full 15 years to reach the 7th rank. Long Fei Yi had only needed a year? Long Fei Yi gave the old man Kinzo an even more shocking answer. There's no 6th rank. This disciple advanced from the 5th rank to the 7th rank. That's why it took less than a month for me to recover from the internal injuries I sustained at the medicine-requesting cave. I didn't use the lust-bite energy to kill Long Yu. Who helped you? The old man Kinzo asked anxiously. Long Fei Yi might be able to break through in a short period of time if he worked hard, but he didn't believe Long Fei Yi could do it without outside help. Besides Master's internal energy, there shouldn't be anyone else in this world who can help this disciple, right? Long Fei Yi retorted. That's right. Only an 8th rank expert like the old man Kinzo could help a 5th rank expert reach the 7th rank. Thus, no one had helped Long Fei Yi. It was all Long Fei Yi's own hard work. The old man Kinzo looked at Long Fei Yi and gave a start. In the end, he broke into a bitter smile. Fortune makes fools of men. Fortune makes fools of men. Why does Master say such things? Long Fei Yi felt a little uneasy. Master thought you were injured, so I sent you to the Abstinence Courtyard to reflect on your mistakes. That way, Tsang Chiozi won't suspect you. The old man Kinzo sighed with emotion. I never expected you. Forget it, forget it. The old man Kinzo took Long Fei Yi's hand and used 2 fingers to test his internal energy. After a while, he sighed again. You're an early 7th rank, but you can't defeat Tsang Chiozi. He's a mid-7th rank now, so Master can't help you. Every rank of the Nirvana Heart Arts was divided into 3 levels. The gap between each level was huge, and many people couldn't compare to it in their entire lives. Long Fei Yi didn't take the matter to heart. A complicated look flickered past his eyes before he said, "Master, you've nurtured a tiger for so many years. Are you finally going to make a move?" It was precisely because his master hadn't been involved that Song Chiozi had been able to win over the scripture and sword depositories and even various other factions in the martial arts circles. Long Fei, you could tell that his master was afraid of forcing Song Chiozi into a corner and causing internal strife. He could also tell that his master had sent him to the abstinence courtyard on purpose. But now he realized that his master was really planning to deal with Song Chiozi. The old man Kinzo bowed his head and drank his tea in silence. Only the incense in the room could be heard. Long Fei waited patiently without asking any questions. His intuition told him that the situation on Celestial Mountain was far worse than he imagined. Otherwise, his master wouldn't be so quiet. Nor would he miss the chance to spare Song Chiozi today. After a long time, the old man Kinzo finally revealed a shocking secret. Song Chiozi has been in frequent contact with the heretical sword sect these days. As soon as there's internal strife, he'll lead the wolf into the house. What gall? Long Fei said coldly. The heretical sword sect was also a branch of Tianshan Kinzo. 100 years ago, they were expelled for cultivating Tianshan Kinzo's forbidden arts. Even now, they were enemies of Tianshan Kinzo in the orthodox martial arts circles. The members of the heretical sword sect were cold, merciless, and bloodthirsty. As soon as Song Chiozi lured them to Celestial Mountain, the peaceful Celestial Mountain would be plunged into a reign of terror. The old man Kinzo was too lazy to care what Song Chiozi did inside Celestial Mountain. Tianshan Kinzo was the master of the world's most powerful martial arts and the leader of the martial arts circles. Fighting for power and scheming against each other was inevitable. As long as Song Chiozi didn't go overboard, the old man would turn a blind eye. But if Song Chiozi was bold enough to lure the heretical sword sect to Celestial Mountain, the old man couldn't ignore him. "Master, how are you planning to help your disciple deal with Song Chiozi?" Long Fei probed. "Master was planning to send you to the abstinence courtyard to treat your wounds and use the chance to pass on internal energy to you, so you can reach the late 7th rank. But now, the old man Kinzo felt helpless. His disciple had created a miracle and advanced 2 levels in a row. He should be happy, but he couldn't bring himself to do so. If Long Fei's internal energy was still at the 6th level, he could give him his own and help him advance to the later stages of the 7th level. That way, Long Fei would definitely win against Song Chiozi's mid-7th level. But now Long Fei had advanced to the 7th rank on his own and wouldn't be affected by external forces. Even if he used up all of his internal energy, he wouldn't be able to help. If Long Fei fought with Song Chiozi, he'd lose for sure. Long Fei looked at the old man Kinzo in silence. He finally understood why his master wanted to abdicate. Once his master passed on internal energy to him to help him advance, it meant his master's internal energy would drop by at least 1 level. Then he'd lose his status as the martial arts circle's #1 expert. Actually, his master's martial arts were enough to kill Song Chiozi with ease. But if Song Chiozi was executed, the heretical sword sect would have even more reason to attack the mountain, the Lockhart Courtyard disciples would have more reason to rebel, and the sword and scripture depositories elders would have more reason to denounce him for his inaction. Ever since Tianshan Kinzo was founded, there had never been any internal strife, much less any scandals. His master didn't want that, so he chose to sacrifice his own internal energy so he could participate in the ranking matches. Aside from the sect leader, all disciples of Celestial Mountain were allowed to participate in the ranking matches. Once they did, they were responsible for their own life and death. Even if he killed Song Chiozi during the matches, no one would dare to say a word. Once he killed Song Chiozi, his master would give him the position of sect leader. Everything would be perfectly justified and logical. Who would dare complain? The old man Kinzo knew he'd lost the hearts of his disciples, so he pushed Long Fei forward. He wanted to use the most peaceful method possible to resolve the hidden dangers of Celestial Mountain. Long Fei understood. It was the same idea as his goal for this trip. Long Fei wanted to use the ranking matches to kill Zhang Qiuzi, stabilize the hearts of the various factions, and intimidate the disciples of the two depositories and courtyards. A fair fight was the wisest choice. He didn't have time or energy to waste on Celestial Mountain. After all, he belonged to the imperial court, not the Jianghu. Long Fei rose to his feet and bowed with hands clasped in front. Master, you can help your disciple. Please undo this disciple's lustbite seal. This disciple can only win the ranking matches. Defeat is not an option. Lustbite seal. The old man Kinzo was alarmed. Impossible. You're seeking death. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.